Hey, it's 3 o'clock on a Friday afternoon. Did I lose my music, or can I not hear it?
No, you can hear perfectly.
Was I
It's
just
fine.
going too long?
Yeah.
I blame someone else for keeping me distracted while
The bed ran out.
trying to. Sorry.
Classic.
How you doing?
I'm fantastic.
Good.
I'm great.
He's Elijah. He's great. I'm Jay, and I was a few seconds late to get on the air.
That's a false start. Or a delay game, I guess.
Yeah,
That's
delay
a
game. That's a delay game. 5 yards.
It's still 5 yards.
5 yards, but we'll repeat the down, and away we go. David Cloninger will join us coming up the bottom of the hour. DC is on his way to beautiful Starkville, Mississippi, site of not one but two South Carolina basketball games this weekend. The men will open conference play tomorrow at the Hump, and Dawn Staley's ladies will take on State for Game 2 of their season in SEC play. Congrats to Coach Dawn last night for about 10, 12 minutes. It was close, but mainly because that's when the game started, and then it wasn't.
Because sometimes it does take 10 minutes to build a 20-point lead.
Yeah. But Carolina ends up winning comfortably last night at Mizzou for Coach Dawn, her 200th career Southeastern Conference victory. That's a lot.
That's a lot. Yeah, that's a lot of wins for a career.
Yeah.
Even more so for just conference wins.
That's the last place Carolina lost a basketball game, so that won't happen this year in terms of losing there.
In conference play.
Conference play. That's right, in conference play. I got to be careful with that.
Or conference regular season, because they did lose that Kentucky game.
They lost to Kentucky on a neutral site. They lost to Iowa at a neutral site. They lost to UCLA in Pauley Pavilion.
It's amazing. We just reeled off all the places they've lost since 2021.
Yeah, since the final week of 2021. Yeah, so
incredible.
Yeah, it's not bad.
Yeah,
they're
I mean, that's
they're doing all right.
When you put it that way, when you
have
lay it
that
out
as the context, it's not bad. But we'll have both those games for you here on WNKT FM over the weekend. DC will join us to give us a little bit of both. We'll talk a little football with David as well. Our very good friend Langston Moore, as we kind of prophesied on Monday's program, that Langston would likely be back at the end of the week after the bowl game. And let me just say that there's a lot that he is ready to discuss.
Good.
Yeah. And we'll get into some NFL stuff with him, too. This bowl game, listen, today, if yesterday maybe was a day for you and your family to be traveling back from Florida, if you went to the game or just wherever your family may have been for the new year, we are not going to I'm not discouraging you from talking more about the bowl game if you've got thoughts. And I never like to do it, but we did leave a pretty loaded phone line yesterday. And that's never what we want to do, but we only have 3 hours, and we quite literally ran out of time. So if you did not get your thoughts in yesterday and you would like to, when it comes to the game itself, which includes some of the extracurricular within the game structure, then by all means do. One thing we will discuss a little bit more today with both David and Langston, and we'll get into it ourselves in just a minute. Nick Emenwari did put out a statement last night about half an hour after we left the air, and really his situation was one that we just, let's get what Langston has to say as a former player on this, because opt-outs are one thing. This was not an opt-out even by today's standards.
Yeah, this is different.
It was different, and so we'll get into those things. Another thing away from Carolina that is quite fascinating that I want to get into with Langston a little bit in the amount of time we'll have with him is this MVP race in the National Football League. I think it's down. You tell me if I'm missing someone. I think it's down to 3 quarterbacks from the AFC and a tailback from the NFC. I know Saquon's had a hell of a year. Saquon's not going to be the MVP.
Yeah, the NFL's devalued the running back position too much.
And I can't, with all due respect.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, I agreed.
Because if he played this Sunday, he's breaking that record.
Well, and, again, to sound like old dude compared to you, when I grew up, man, George Rogers, obviously Rookie of the Year and all the things he did, and All-Pro Earl Campbell, Billy Sims, Marcus Allen, I could go on and on. Walter Payton, right, into Barry and Emmett. even to Eddie George, who had was that kind of back.
Was carrying the ball 30-plus times a game during his peak.
And I felt like for a while, like, well, there's Eddie George is the last. And then we've had a few others since then. And I think Saquon has come back to that. But hear me out. I think the Philadelphia Eagles could be nearly as good as they are if, to use the baseball win above replacement, if you had, I don't want to say the average tailback, but a slightly above average tailback. Again, what Saquon is doing is fantastic, but he's not going to be the most valuable player if voters in the NFL this season truly look at the V in valuable relative to outstanding, even if it is outstanding, what Lamar is doing, what Josh Allen is doing. But the other quarterback out of the AFC that is going to get consideration, I read a good piece about it this morning, actually about 10 minutes after you and I talked, when I was talking about him, and I saw one pop up, is Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow is having a season for the ages.
An insane season.
The unfortunate part is that after 12 games, his team was 4-8. Now, they've been hit by injury on defense more than just having a bad defense, but they didn't really find a way to make up for it. He had a couple of guys missing on offense, and he's still done his thing. But his numbers are off the charts. Now, the Bengals have a chance. They go to Pittsburgh. They are actually the betting favorite. The other teams that are in the mix are the Broncos, who host the Chiefs, who are not starting most of their frontline players. That game is in Denver. And now we know that the Dolphins, the third team that can make it, are likely to be without Tua. And they play the Jets. So they should – I could go quarterback.
I was going to say they can get Jay Fiedler back in there at quarterback.
Me or him, whichever Jay you want. But – sorry.
Jay Phillips, Jay Fiedler.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
What's the difference between you two anyway?
Yeah, very little. No, we're probably he's probably younger than me, but I don't know how old he is.
Jay Fiedler, coached by Mike Shula.
I don't know how old he is. But anyway.
In Miami?
Anyway. It's going to be, I think it's going to be Lamar or Josh. I do. But man, does Joe Burrow, because, again, in terms of value on going into for that team on the last weekend of the season to still be alive and to be the betting favorite going to the Pittsburgh Steelers, who are better than them, is because Joe Burrow is playing out of his mind. And if I'm Joe Burrow and his agent, what am I doing? Right? I don't know. And you got to tell me. I don't know. I haven't looked it up. I don't know what the rest of his contract looks like in terms of how much time is left or anything like that. But I have got to put my foot down somewhere. I have got to let the Brown family know, hey, y'all got to do more. We've been to the Super Bowl already. You got to put a team here that can do this again. I don't want to be Archie Manning from the 70s. I don't want to be Dan Marino from the late 80s and 90s. I don't want to
get back.
I don't want to be that guy. And of course, Archie never went to the Super Bowl. But at least Dan went once, young, like Burrow, and never went back. And yet, who do many people consider to be, like, just in terms of pure thrower of the football, the best at it, Dan Marino. Now, I'm not here to say Dan Marino was. I'm just saying he never went back to the Super Bowl.
Yeah. You know what's really funny thing about the Bengals? 29th in points against on a per-game basis. Defense is really bad. Yet they still have the NFL's leader in sacks on their team.
Yeah, it is weird.
It's very weird. Yeah. That's a very weird. There's not a lot on that team that makes sense. 29th in scoring defense, and then in scoring offense, they were 6th going into last week. They're still 6th.
Yeah.
But a top 6 scoring offense, bottom 3 scoring defense, potential MVP at quarterback, the sack leader on the edge, and Trey Hendrickson. It's a very, very weird situation.
But I love what Lamar's doing. Man, he's not just gotten so good. He's gotten so great.
He's awesome.
And Josh Allen. So again, when you look at the V in most valuable player, without Lamar in Baltimore and without Josh in Buffalo, those teams aren't in the playoffs.
Oh, agreed.
They're just not. They're just not. And again, with Saquon, with all due respect, I think you can go get somebody who's done 80%, which would be a hell of a season, I might add. 80% of what Saquon's doing across the board, and I think the Eagles aren't really missing a beat. That's my opinion.
Same Eagles team went to the Super Bowl a couple of years ago.
Yeah, and I love it again. I
running back by committee.
Tip my cap to Saquon Barkley. By the way, I saw this today. The last National Football League most valuable player to miss the playoffs.
Ooh, I love trivia questions like this. To miss the playoffs.
The last National Football League MVP to miss the playoffs.
It wouldn't be Sean Alexander, would it?
It would not.
I think that team did end up going to the playoffs, maybe.
No, I think he was
further than Sean Alexander for
yeah.
the back? Oh, so we're talking way, way back.
Way back. O.J. Simpson, 1973, Buffalo Bills. 1973 is the last time an NFL MVP's team didn't make the playoffs. I think Sean Alexander, was he MVP when they I know he was an offense. Wasn't he an offensive player of the year and they missed the playoffs? Maybe he was an MVP as well. Check that out for me.
Yeah, because I want to say he got him an MVP when he scored almost 30 rushing touchdowns.
But anyway, I saw that this morning, the last MVP. So it's been 51 years since an NFL MVP missed the playoffs, and it was O.J. Simpson on some bad Bills teams. And whatever we think of O.J.
Like when he had 2,000 yards in a season.
O.J. the running
games.
back, I got to just say, was obviously one of the best to ever do it. Speaking of running backs, as we continue on with today's program, Georgia is going to have to go find one. With all due respect to young Mr. Etienne, not enough all season long. Of course, he missed a few games, but Georgia last night bowing out to a Notre Dame team. I told you, and I told a good friend of mine as well, Notre Dame, from my vantage point, and I realize you weren't around to see this, but Notre Dame last night was reminding me in terms of just the ferocity and the speed of the 90s FSU defenses that were just frightening to other teams, man. FSU had some players on offense, too, trust me. But, man, could they play defense.
Derek Brooks, right?
Yeah. And that's what they felt like to me last night. And so I said this on Twitter, and I said it to you. So many clean looks. I got to tip my cap to the Notre Dame coaching staff. Listen, Georgia, neither one of these teams was good on offense last night. Notre Dame wins by 13 points because of about a 30-second period at the end of the first half with the Georgia turnover down deep, and they score, and then they return the opening kick of the third quarter for a touchdown. That's it. That's their touchdowns.
Defense and special teams.
That's it. Otherwise, they kicked 3 field goals. That's all Notre Dame did. It's just that Georgia couldn't score.
And Georgia turned the ball over. That's
turned the ball over?
They fumbled the ball deep in the red zone in the first quarter, too.
Right.
And there was one fumble where Stockton was rolling to the right, got hit, kind of in a similar play where they lost the fumble towards the end of the first half, but the ball goes out of bounds.
Right.
Notre Dame caused about 3 or 4 fumbles in
They
this
were
game.
wreaking havoc on defense.
The difference is Notre Dame, because Georgia's defense was lights out, too.
They were fantastic.
But Notre Dame, outside of turnover on downs, did not turn the ball over.
And Georgia did. And Georgia had, 4 drives end pointless in Notre Dame territory. Notre Dame was fantastic, man, defensively. Again, Georgia was very good last night. I thought Georgia was that was an old school, 70s, 80s, 90s kind of defensive game, man. Probably should have ended more like 13-10. But again, Notre Dame's only 2 touchdowns. A kick return, which again, it counts, and you fumble and they score, it counts. Not here to take away from it. Not saying Georgia was better. I'm not, because they weren't.
They were not on defense and special teams,
right.
And that was the difference in the game. Yeah. Going back to the kickoff return and the punt move off and offside.
So the CFP Final Four, if you will, is set. We'll get into that for you. More on what Nick Emmanwori had to say. David Cloninger coming up in a bit, talking Gamecock football and hoops. It's the Friday Postgame Show. 20 minutes after 3 o'clock on this Friday afternoon. Welcome back in. Jay and Elijah with you. David Cloninger of the Post and Courier coming up in about 10 or 15 minutes. Our buddy, the former Gamecock, Langston Moore, joining us top of the 4 o'clock hour. The CFP semifinals are set. We'll go over that in a bit. Again, Notre Dame beating Georgia last night 23-10 on a magnificent display of defense against the Bulldogs. Speaking of defense, coming back home here, let me preface it with this. We touched on this yesterday a few times, but again, Nick Emenwari, disappointing, I think, a lot of people around Gamecock football and just Gamecock fans in general by just basically, look, yesterday we had somebody say quitting in the middle of the game. If you want to be more technical about it and try to put a more positive spin, opting out at halftime. He did put out a statement finally. One of the things that I said yesterday that Nick needed to do was to say something publicly as quickly as possible. Whether people are buying into his message or not, I don't know. And to be perfectly honest with you, Elijah Campbell, I have seen what he put on Twitter. I think I sent you a screenshot of the tweet. I did not go down into the replies. So I don't know what was said in the replies. I imagine some of it was good, and I imagine some of it was bad.
I will say I did not go into the replies of that one specific post. He did have one yesterday where he announced where he was declaring for the drafts, which I think was kind of a type deal. And I will say I did go into the comments. I did put on my rubber gloves. I put on some PPV, the mask.
Hazmat suit.
Yeah, I did what one should do when going into the comments where all the experts weigh in.
Yeah.
And surprisingly enough, 90% were, hey, good luck at the next level.
That's
Thanks
good.
for everything you did as a South Carolina Gamecock.
That's good.
There was one bleep you in there.
Sure.
But there were, for the most part, and of course, this was, I want to say, 20 hours ago, something like that. So a lot can change.
Well, this came down, I saw it and sent it to you, maybe, I don't know.
About 7.
Yeah,
15.
and I think it came down about 6:30. But I sent it to you a little after 7. It was getting towards the end of the game. But here's what Nick said. Thank you, South Carolina. These past 3 years, a bunch of history and memories were made. I swear I wouldn't trade it for anything. The journey was amazing. I'm a little bittersweet about leaving, but I'm glad I got to suit up with the team one last time. They meant a lot to me. And he goes on to talk about he's moving on to the draft. But then the big one that I think it's as Elijah said, kind of duh, we know you're leaving, and we pretty much have known that. Well, that's been the feeling around him for a few months, right? I mean, he's been getting some very good pre-draft grades by the experts, not just by, fans. But he said, let me get to this to make sure I get it all right. He says, as for the bowl, it was miscommunication between me and some coaches. We weren't on the same page. I'll take some accountability for that. Never intended for it to end like that. And I never quit on my teammates. Still one hell of a season to look back and celebrate. Glad I was a part of it. I told Elijah, and again, I'd love to have Nick say, because, again, everything I could gather yesterday, and I know there was a piece that the folks at Gamecock Central did today. Everything I was told yesterday pointed me in the direction that there was no communication. So, look, I'm not here to beat up on a kid, but there is a difference in miscommunication and a lack of communication. I gave Elijah an example this morning. A miscommunication would be, no, I told you to take the third left after Main Street, not the second left, so that you'll avoid the one-way street. Whereas if I take the wrong one and you didn't tell me anything, and all of a sudden I'm on a one-way street in the wrong direction, I'm in bad shape all of a sudden. That's a lack of communication. This would appear to be more of a lack of communication until halftime. I don't know who knew what. And, again, maybe more will come out. And like I say, I'm not here to beat up on a kid, and I'm not here to dwell too much on this, but it was a horrible, horrible look. And amongst all the other things that were happening in a game that turned out to have a lot more in it from an emotional standpoint than we might have imagined going in, it made it that much more difficult. And And I have to wonder to some degree if it didn't play into the outburst that we saw from Coach Beamer because the emotions were running so high.
I haven't thought about that angle really until you just mentioned it right now. It's just because he wasn't happy about that.
It's a log on the fire, right? But it might be that really dry split log that just goes whoom, when you have a fire already burning. And so, again, Nick is, and as I said yesterday, I think one of the things that makes it even harder for some is that he is from Columbia. And maybe it doesn't. I don't know. I'm just saying, you can form an attachment with anybody, right? Yeah. George Rogers is from Atlanta. Don't ever, he may as well have gone to Eau Claire, right?
He's been adopted here locally as Columbia's own.
I mean, so, I think it's a lack of communication. And I think it's a bad, like I say, if he tried to follow the Cam Ward thing and say, well, Cam only played a half. Again, if you didn't hear this already about that situation, everybody in the Miami football program knew well in advance, during bowl prep, weeks in advance, here's the plan. So everybody knew. Nobody seemed to know other than Nick and maybe some around Nick that he was going to do this. So that's not a miscommunication, in my opinion. That's a lack of communication.
Well, in that situation, too, who's the most important person that needs to know if you are playing in the second half or not?
Yeah, your head coach.
The head coach, right? The head coach needs to be notified. If he said, because the words he told David were, I told a coach I wasn't doing it. So when did you tell that coach? Which coach did you tell? And if you're that coach, when did you know? When did you notify Shane that Nick wasn't going to do it? And also, if you're Nick too, I mean, again, I don't want to beat up on the kid too much. He's, at the end of the day, he is still a kid. He's still a very young man. He's about to go into the NFL. At the same time, that's one of those things that you should probably tell the coach yourself, the head coach yourself.
Yes.
Or have that discussion with them.
Yes.
That way everybody's on the same page. If you got this idea late, run it by
even if you do it the night before or something. But when you do it, even if you had done it the morning of, I don't think that's good timing.
Still not good timing.
But certainly
because the game plan's in place.
Yeah,
the game plan is in place to have you on the field.
The night before would be disruptive as well. And that's why I say the Cam Ward thing or Malik Neighbors last year with LSU, again, there was a plan in place. And that's the thing about it. This is a bad mistake for this young man, and he can overcome it, and he will overcome it.
Oh, it's not career ending. I don't think an NFL team's going to ask him about the Cheez-It Citrus Bowl in his interviews.
Yeah, they may say, "What was up with that?" And just try to figure out where he is in terms of, can I rely on you? Are you going to be upfront with me? Have you learned from this so that when we need to have communication, it's there, and that you're not calling lack of communication miscommunication? Because again, there is a difference.
Yeah, there is a significant difference.
We'll see what DC. I know DC's been following this. We'll get a little bit on that from David coming up. But primarily, David on the way to Starkville, as we said, where, again, not one but two South Carolina basketball games this weekend. It's hoops season, y'all. Conference hoops season. We'll do that and more with DC when the postgame show returns. Talking a little Carolina football, a little Carolina hoops. Dawn Staley getting conference regular season win. DC will know if it includes tournaments too. 200th win in conference play in some form or fashion last night, and they'll be at the Hump on Sunday to take on the MSU ladies. South Carolina's men's team gets it going tomorrow in conference play against the Bulldogs at the Hump as well. And we've been talking about Nick Emanwari, too. David Cloninger with us for the first time in 2025. And since I am a proponent of saying Happy New Year as long as possible, here on the 3rd, it's real easy. Happy New Year, DC. What's up?
Well, same old, guys. About 30 minutes outside of Starkville. So, I've seen a lot of deer on the side of the highway, but none in front of my car. So that's always a good thing.
That is good. Yes, that is quality. I want to read you something that I just got, David, from a listener, which I think sums it up. And then I want you to talk about the Nick Emanwari thing. Then we're going to move on from it because I know you've been following this story. This is from Ryan. Hits us on Twitter. Says, I have a lot of kind things to say regarding Nick. Shane has nothing to gain by throwing him under the bus because recruiting has to continue to improve. But he, Nick, isn't a kid in the way college football players were pre-NIL. He is an employee, and he should be held accountable in the same ways we all are if we don't show up for work. This isn't about Nick. It's about the direction of college football. If you want millions, you will need to show up. Is that the common refrain, David, around the program when it comes to the Nick Emanwari situation this week?
I think there's a little bit of that, Jay. I mean, obviously it's a new day, new year, new era of college football where this kind of thing is going to become normal and playing kids is normal. And obviously you're just going to have to deal with the repercussions of that, when this time of year comes around of kids saying, well, is it worth it if I play? Is it worth it if I don't play? And as a result, the contracts that they sign to get paid are going to have to start coming with, well, if you don't play, you're going to forfeit this amount of money, or you're going to have to you'll pay a buyout to us if you're moving on into the transfer portal, that kind of thing. So, it's definitely an interesting situation. USC's not going to do anything to trash the kid. There's obviously a lot.
Uh-oh.
Did he just get Mississippi'd?
Because Nick, you're not supposed to be able to do that, or you're not supposed to do that. It would have been fine if he'd have just opted out of the entire bowl game.
Yeah.
Everybody would have understood. But the fact is that he waited a half and then said, okay, I'm done, and then posted some kind of mealy-mouthed apology. Well, it was just a miscommunication. No, it wasn't. You quit, and that's it.
Yeah.
So maybe some will forgive him because of what he posted. Maybe some won't. But the fact is, as far as USC is concerned, it's over and done with. He wasn't going to be on the team next year anyway. So it's best for everybody just to move on.
Yeah, I called it a lack of communication, David, not a miscommunication. There is a difference. It's not semantics. There's a difference. A lack of communication is just that. There's a void. Miscommunication. Again, I gave Elijah the analogy. I told you to turn the third left after Main Street, but if I don't tell you anything and you turn and you go down the wrong way of a one-way street, that's bad because I didn't tell you anything. So anyway, we'll see where that goes. I don't want to dwell on it. Like I said, not trying to beat up on anybody, but it was certainly a bad look. Now, real quick from you, final thoughts on the game. I know, like Elijah, you guys were there in the press box. A disappointing end to the season, but a very fine season in most regards, nonetheless.
Oh, absolutely, Jay. I mean, 9-win seasons aren't done around here very often, and it's always something to be celebrated. It was a great year, especially the last half of the year, where this team was spinning its wheels at 3-3, had a couple of close losses that probably should have gone the other way, but they didn't. So you're 3-3, and after 6 games, you kind of are what you are. But they found a way to make themselves so much better. Their defense played a lot better. Their quarterback played, basically a 180 from what he had played so far and became a superstar. And they won 6 straight games to really put themselves in a great position. Very disappointing that they couldn't get a 10th win, but, things happen in bowl games, and you're missing key players, and sometimes the other team just plays better than you, and I think that's exactly what Illinois did.
Dave, and of course, obviously the reason you're going to Starkville is for SEC play to start, and on the men's side, I mean, there have been some up and downs in conference play. You got 3 ACC wins, one being your arch rival, and then you also had some downs, which is losing to North Florida, trailing against both Radford and Presbyterian at halftime, but still coming away with wins. Every game is going to be difficult now because I believe 15 or 16 of your 18 conference games will be quad one games, and you're playing in what has been not just the best conference in college basketball this year. This may be one of the deepest and best conferences college basketball has seen in decades. How prepared do you think this men's team is to be able to face this gauntlet starting tomorrow?
Well, I mean, I think they know who they are, Elijah, but as Lamont Paris, listed last game, I should say, maybe the reason they just didn't really have it together for Presbyterian was because they were looking so forward to conference play. You certainly hope that's true because you can't have slow starts like they've been having in games or at the start of this schedule if you hope to have a good year. The North Florida loss, hey, it was a long time ago, but it's still a bad loss. You can kind of equal that with a win over a good Clemson team. But right now, South Carolina just doesn't have a great resume. That doesn't really matter at this point because conference play was always going to determine it. That said, if you don't make some hay in the conference, you're not going to go anywhere, and I think that they know that. You might get a little bit of a break this year because the SEC is so good. Maybe if you go 9-9 over the next 18, that could be enough to tickle the fancy of somebody on the selection committee. Maybe. But the fact is that you're going to have to do a whole lot to get to 9-9 the way South Carolina's been playing lately.
David, Mississippi State is very good. Looking right now, they are currently 18th in the net ranking. Then South Carolina has home games against number 10 and number 1 in the net rankings. So to kind of piggyback off of Elijah's question, if it's not an ideal start, and I'm not saying Carolina is going to go 0-3, but if it's not an ideal start, what does that look like in your estimation in terms of trying to climb that particular kind of mountain? I mean, they didn't get any favors done with this opening schedule.
Well, guys, it reminds me of an old Simpsons episode. You remember when Bart put his radio down the well and pretended to be a little lost boy?
Yes.
And then they're all down there with their shovels, and you hear somebody say, hey, we'll dig our way out. No, dig up, stupid.
Right.
That's how it's going to be. It's even an 0-3 start. It's like, well, it's not impossible to get out, but there are no easy games, especially this season. And when you have to try to stack wins together to get out of a hole, it's just going to make it more difficult. I mean, say you go 0-3, well, let's just win 2 more. Okay, but then you lost 1 after that. Okay, well, we'll win another one. Okay, but you lost 2 more after that, and so on and so forth. So going to be very difficult. But, that's why you play, and it's why you can't look at this as an 18-game schedule. You just have to say, all right, Mississippi State is up on Saturday. And after that, I don't know who we have next. I don't know. And that's how you have to treat it, even though you probably do know. So got to go out there. I don't know if there's going to be that much difference in how the opponent plays as opposed to how South Carolina can change its ways. USC has a set system that it has to play at to be successful. And if they can limit the other team from doing what it does, they can win some games.
David, this is something that, Alan Cole and I have talked about a lot in terms of just like the usage of certain players in this team. My biggest gripe with this team or concern is that I don't think you have enough playmaking guards to be able to win a lot of games in this conference. I think you're going to have to play a lot through Colin Murray-Boyles. And right now he's, I believe, 9th in the SEC, according to Bart Torvik, in terms of usage percentage. He's at, I think they're using like 1 out of every 4 possessions. I almost feel like that number needs to go up. How much more of the offense do you think will ultimately get played through Colin once we get into these games that, like you mentioned, you keep messing around in games in the SEC, you're going to dig a pretty steep hole.
Yeah, I mean, obviously he's your best player. Give the ball to your best player and let's go best on best and see what can happen. But they also know that he can't do it by himself. I mean, there aren't a lot of teams that can only have one player do it by himself. You have to have some supporting pieces. And as good as Colin is, I mean, he's an outstanding player. I just don't know if he'll be able to handle being he can handle being a 20-10 guy every game, no problem. But if you need him to be a 26-14 guy, he might wear down a little bit toward the midpoint of the season. So you just have to look at it and say who's going to step up, who's going to be the guy. Nick Pringle has played great on occasion. Jamari Thomas has turned it on occasion. Miles Studi has turned it on occasion. What you need to have is those occasions become consistent. You need to have them become excellent stretches of games because right now, Elijah, I agree with you. There's been a whole lot of spottiness from the lineup for guys not named Colin Murray-Boyles.
Starts tomorrow at 2 for the guys. A little less than a minute here, DC, real quick. Dawn's team wins last night at Mizzou, 83-52. The bench made it 57-52, if you will. Is that good?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Dawn's going to play all of her players. It's just that simple. And, she did that last night because it's the common rotation, and they happen to have better nights than the starters did. So there's going to be other nights like that, and it's always good to see because you're not just going to depend on 5 to beat the other team. It's going to be, at this point, all 11 with 2 players out with injury indefinitely.
Have a great weekend in Mississippi. We will holler at you again real soon. Appreciate you as always.
No problem, guys. I'll send you a postcard from the Little Dewey. Thanks for having me.
Sir. Yeah, bring us something back. There you go. Do that. That's David Cloninger, DCPNC, to follow along on Twitter, postandcourier.com. Make sure you're signing up. Here's a resolution. Sign up for DC's newsletter. It's got good stuff in it. You're listening to the Friday Postgame Show. Welcome back in. Final few minutes of our first hour here on this Friday afternoon. Jay Phillips, Elijah Campbell with you. It's the Postgame Show on The Game. Thanks, as always, to our good friend David Cloninger, who did not go to Disney World. I'll tell you who did.
Boo.
Well, our good friend McGee Moody, former Gamecock swim coach, texted me this morning, and he and his family are at Disney World. They were clearly in the Magic Kingdom based on his picture. And I guess it was around 11. He said they got there a little before 9 and had yet to ride anything because of how long the lines were.
Good Lord.
Which I can believe it, man. When you've got a holiday week like this where the holiday itself is in the middle, so you can, chumps like you and me came back to work.
Yeah.
That's because we're chumps. But, for those that are...
I'm impatient.
The non-chumps.
Don't like waiting in lines.
Yeah. Listen... My wife and I have been to Epcot, twice on New Year's Eve, and we go to, and I've been to Disney World like a lot. And Epcot is huge, so even when it's crowded, and you do wait in some lines, like there's room to move. I can't imagine what it's like if Magic Kingdom is at full capacity. Because there are days where we've been like on a Wednesday, like the week after Thanksgiving, which is a good time to go crowd-wise. And it's like sometimes there's places where you can hardly move, man.
It's still stupid crowded.
Like I just can't imagine what it's like if it's at capacity.
Man, the older I get too, the worse I get in crowds. If it's like overly crowded anywhere, I don't like it.
Well, if you're paying so much. And again, look, I am not a Disney World hater quite the opposite. Like I even told him in the text, I'm paraphrasing, but I said something like, well, hey, you know what? At least you're there, which is pretty cool because it's just always fun to be there. But it's not fun to pay $100 and whatever bucks plus food and then ride like two things.
That's where they get you.
Yeah. So, but David didn't go. So, but the little guy's going. So I said, you got to take the little guy sometime soon. He's getting to that age. He'll be 5.
Yeah. So you got to go at least once in your childhood.
Yeah. I got the first time I went. It was for my 6th birthday.
Okay.
And I love that place. Anyway, so for those of you who went, hit me up. Hit us on the text line with what your favorite ride was, or things like that. How many construction walls are still up at different places? They're getting ready.
Space Mountain's still the best.
It's a good one.
Still a big fan.
Yeah, it's a good one. My hands down favorite is Tower of Terror. Hands down. Not even close. I don't even know. Number 2 now, that new Guardians of the Galaxy ride is pretty awesome. At Epcot, did that one. Again, Carolina and Mississippi State tomorrow. I'm looking, and again, the women play there on Sunday. Let's see, Elijah. Now, the BPI gives South Carolina just a 19.4% chance to win this game. 19.4%. Mississippi State has one loss to Butler. They've got some good wins. Go here over their schedule. They've beaten Utah, SMU, UNLV, Pitt, Memphis. So they have some good wins. South Carolina has 3 wins over ACC teams, including that thriller over Clemson. Not much else in terms of like just big-time wins. But, and I'm not making any predictions yet. I honestly haven't watched enough of other conference teams. I mean, I've seen some games here and there. But I know our buddy Jack Veltri put out that Ken Palm, and I know that's one of Derek Scott's favorite sites to use as well, Ken Palm projects South Carolina to go 5-13 in conference play. And that's rather frightening. I don't know if that happens. One of the things that I told Elijah, and I'm not predicting any of this, okay? But I told Elijah this morning, I always remind myself. So I've been doing this now for close to 30 years, which is kind of hard to believe. The year South Carolina went 15-1 and won the Southeastern Conference, including that amazing senior day win at Rupp Arena. They also lost in December in Carolina Coliseum to UNC Asheville and to Charleston Southern.
Ironically enough.
And trust me, there were a lot of folks, y'all might remember it, like, oh, yeah, all that promise of, how they looked at the end of the season and they won 2 games in the NIT and here's all of whatever. And Eddie lit a fire under them somewhere along the way. Can Lamont do something similar? I'm not saying they're going to go 17-1. By the way, only loss.
Impossible.
Only loss at Georgia that year.
Also very ironic.
Georgia beat them again in the tournament. And then Tubby went to Kentucky. Coincidence?
Tubby was a good coach.
I think not.
This is a gettable one, though.
But
Mississippi State's good.
Last year 13-5, now projected 5-13. You need to land somewhere squarely in the middle of those to feel good.
Yeah.
And, we'll see. But tomorrow, again, just a 19% chance to win it. We'll talk more about it coming up just a bit. But first, more football with Langston Moore on the other side. 4 o'clock on this Friday afternoon. Welcome back in. It's the second hour of the Postgame Show, along with Elijah Campbell. I'm Jay Phillips. We are inside the Herndon Chevy Studios in downtown Columbia. I think it's a beautiful day. Again, I can't see out the window anymore, but I'm trying. Believe me, I'll just prop something up. But it seems like a really nice day. Langston will join us in just a minute. A lot more to get to, and we discuss the bowl game. I know Langston has some thoughts on that, and we'll get into drive around the SEC coming up for you in just a little bit. Final weekend of the NFL regular season. Most playoff, I say matchups aren't set yet, but most playoff teams are known at this point in time. The AFC has a little bit of drama. I don't think, is there anything, there's nothing left in the NFC, right? Everybody that's going to the playoffs, other than the only thing we have
has to be discussed.
The only thing we have is
decided.
Either Atlanta or Tampa will win that division and the other will not go to the playoffs.
And host a playoff game.
Yeah.
Potentially a 9-8 team will be hosting a team that has 14 wins, 14-3.
Yes. The
a 14-3 team has to go play on the road,
right? Well, and they should comfortably win. Yes, should.
I mean,
should
a 13-win Saints team or 12-win Saints team had to go play in Seattle, who won 7 games one year, and Marshawn Lynch happened.
Yep.
May or may not still
taste
be traumatized.
the rainbow, baby. Taste the rainbow.
I tasted it all right.
Remember when he scored that winning touchdown for Seattle in the no. You know
well,
why?
I mean, they decided to pass the ball, so I'm sure the ball went into the hands of Ricardo Lockett, who the route is.
Good call, Pete.
I'm looking right now. It says the ball went into the hands of Malcolm Butler. That's a Seahawk, right?
Nope.
No. Fun fact, I've only had to press the dump button behind a soundboard in sports talk radio once in my career.
Oh, yeah.
And it was for Malcolm Butler.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
That's cool.
We had him on, and he said a string of words you're not supposed to say. It wasn't just one.
Oh, my.
It was a couple. He forgot he was on the radio after a training camp practice one year.
Thinking he was doing a podcast or just thinking he was hanging out?
Had to have. Or maybe he was still pretending he was picking off Russell Wilson in the end zone to win a Super Bowl.
There's that.
But that is the only person I've ever had to frantically reach for the dump button for and make sure we didn't get an FCC violation.
Well, I know our next guest would never cause you that concern because he grew up in the business, if you will. His father was a radio professional, and now, in a lot of ways, he himself a radio professional of sorts. He is our good friend Langston Moore, the former Gamecock D lineman, team captain, NFL draft pick of the Cincinnati Bengals. Husband, father, softball expert, barbecue aficionado, and much, much more. And apparently, I don't know where you got some of these pictures, man, but you got some interesting shots of Brett Bielema the other day. How you doing? Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, man. It's Merry New Year. It's you know, the internet. Once everything's on the internet, it belongs to the world. So just, you know, that's what the kids tell me. So I mean, I don't know what's real or what's not sometimes. You know, as the kids tell me, you got to look at the hands. That's how you know when it's AI or whatever. But now some of that stuff I saw out there with Brent was real. So, and, you know, Brent is, you know, in another lifetime, he probably would have been a great guy to be on the Button Gut podcast. But now we strictly, you know, from the Arkansas days all the way up to whatever to now, man. We anti that right now.
Yeah,
I think your op, as the kids would say.
That ship has sailed. Yeah, it was, actually a frightening, whether it's real or not, I don't know, but a frightening type picture.
Is it the spring break picture?
Yeah, it was just it was a shirtless Brett Bielema. Let's put it that way.
There is a notorious.
It's the Frank the Tank. It's Brent the Budweiser guy. What is he holding in his hand? What is that?
I don't know what that is. I don't know. But when I saw that yesterday, when we were confirming Langston's appearance on the program, and he
is it on Langston's Twitter feed?
No, this is via.
Oh yeah.
Well, I think it is on your. Yes, it is on your Twitter feed. That's true. Yes.
Oh yeah, it's definitely paired up with a nice Beamer merch memorabilia. Everyone's paired up. Yeah, I can't believe though, as a man who is well established, you know, even though you're up there in age with me, that you're on the internet. That's been out there for a little bit. I thought you saw the.
Well, I got to be honest with you, shirtless Brett Bielema pictures are not what I'm going for on the web.
It's not on your algorithm.
I'm like 90% sure I know which one we're talking about, and it's just like a spring break photo.
That's it. And
I'm
just
looking right now.
superimpose that picture in anything, like Brent Bielema in the Taco Bell at 3 o'clock in the morning or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Brent Bielema at a Buc-ee's with a shirt on in the snow. And that's the beauty of technology. You just take the simplicity all over. Brent Bielema on fourth down, standing out there with the play sheet. I don't know, with no shirt on. That's the cool thing about technology.
There are some cool things about it. Yes, there are some cool things about it. A lot to get to with you. Let's go to the bowl, and let's go to. I don't want to get here and get too controversial. We spent so much time on it on yesterday's show, but I did want you to weigh in. I think both coaches could have handled themselves a whole lot better in that particular situation. I did think it was taunting and probably should have been flagged, but I can understand too why Brett feels a line was crossed. You've done this for a long time, and you did it for a living at the highest level for a long time. What were you like in the moment?
In the moment, it was hilarious, and then just to kind of see everything kind of like pieced together. Also, too, just knowing like kind of like Brett and who he came up under, Hayden Fry, that old school, like they didn't have anything really that they had for us. They had to play that kind of like Midwest basketball, 49-51 Wednesday night, Indiana versus Illinois type. And that's what Brent was doing the whole time, just keeping it low score, making sure like everything to make sure that he could figure out a way to waste the time out, to do all the things. And again, it worked perfectly. I kind of hate that it was against us. There were times that it felt like, to me, a little bit of hubris from us. Like, we wanted to do certain things. Like, for God's sakes, we're going into next year with Lenore Sellers. Let's not throw a pass with our punter to the backup tackle. I mean, Jesus Christ, I wish that was me. But, no, maybe there were better options there, and let's figure out a different way to do it at that time. But all in all, I think it was, obviously miscommunication because, Shane was talking about one thing, and obviously the substitution stuff back in there, that was really irking him. But Brent was coming over there talking about something totally different with special teams, and Shane's explanation was completely right about that because there's a bevy of people that do it. Watch it tomorrow. Watch it when the NFL comes on. The guys will point to the ball versus doing the T-bar. But, with Brent's whole explanation and all that stuff, like, it's kind of like a good, man, get out of here with that. Because that's the whole reason still we have a kickoff on the NFL. He's talking about that was kind of something we adopted in the NFL with the T-bar to just guys are still running into each other. It's so much to the fact that we had to be like, no, boys, start here 5 yards apart, and that way we can protect you from yourself regardless of a T-bar, because I know plenty of dudes made a living even though it's a kickoff, this ball guy has a career of kicking balls through the end zone. He's still laying into somebody on the kickoff return. So, I mean, it's always reminded me that coaches are knuckleheads, but coaches also have some, what gets under certain guys' skin is crazy. But all in all, it was Shane feeling one thing, Brent feeling another. But ultimately, if we want to talk about, like, the substitution stuff, man, we got to be smarter than that, as a coaching staff, I think, because that was something we kind of put on tape with the Kentucky game and the timeout, and that's a loophole I never saw until that point. And, obviously we've seen the injury and the fake fall down thing, but the whole deal of just transitioning the players out because we subbed out and that causing us to tick down the clock, we got to be smart enough and be like, if we're going to run a tempo offense, no, Mike, we're not subbing in. Run whatever you want, but we're not subbing in. We're going to run them off the field that way. That's how we got to do it. And they just kept getting us with that quarter after quarter. All in all, I don't want that to detract from a great season that we had. 9 wins, very on the precipice of maybe getting 10 wins, but still a phenomenal season. And I just hate, just like I said, you always want to be like Coach Spurrier. You want to win the first one and you want to win the last one.
There's one a schematic thing, too, that I thought was really interesting. So I was talking to T.J. Sanders about it after the game, kind of about how they struggle to stop the run. And he alluded to a couple of the formations where Illinois would have about 9 guys on the line, whether it be offensive linemen or tight ends. And you would see it, right? Like you're watching the play, and the only people that are not on the line are the wide receiver and quarterback and running back, right? Like they would or sometimes not even a wide receiver. You just see a sea of humanity along the line of scrimmage. And TJ mentioned how hard it was for them to overcome that, of still being able to fill the gaps. And Illinois did a really good job of kind of confusing them in that way. They did it a couple times this year, but in that game, I swear, I think in my notes, 7 or 8 times, especially on third down, they were doing that and picking up some chunk yardage on the ground. As a defensive lineman, when you come out and you see them do that formation right there and they're just going to power run at you, how difficult could that be? And do you think that really made a huge difference when it came to Illinois just being able to move the ball well enough to win the game?
Misalignment, misassignment beats you quicker than a mismatch. And that's exactly what that is. There's a there's probably a group chat. I will not name guys who work on this radio station in the morning. His name is Preston. I'm sorry, he works in the early show. And he's putting memes and things of Leonardo DiCaprio biting his fist and just angst and just, oh, my goodness. I'm 7 offensive linemen, tight end, a tackle, overflip, everything you just mentioned, Elijah. That's what happens when you give a lineman, a coach who really has made his bones running the football and some of the things that we put on tape all this time. There's going to be offensive coordinators that are like pass happy. They're going to come out with all like the mug formation. This is what offensive lineman type head coaches come up with and scheme with. That thing is not sexy. That thing is, if it didn't work, you're like, Jesus Christ. But again, it goes back to that Hayden Fry. That's probably something that they see. I mean, the only thing that was missing was probably that plus the T formation, but they had so mmany damn offensive linemen in the tackle over formation that it got everybody out of sorts. And again, we just got to be a little bit better than that in adjustments. You get with football stuff, the old adage is, you don't want to get beat with things 2 or 3 times. So again, you saw me maybe once, twice, but like to your point, there was a time where they were just running it until they couldn't stop it. And again, it made T.J. Sanders a little bit apprehensive. And when I lined up in the right gap, all those different things, and a very, very smart coach a long, long time ago told me that phrase, a misalignment, misalignment beats you quicker than a mismatch. And that's, we definitely had better players, better guys, but just because of the mindset, the mismatch a little bit with all the 7 offensive linemen spreading it out, it was phenomenal. I hated that it was against us. But they did everything in their power to try to get us off the mark, to try to get us that way. They went to the damn box and won, Jay, on a Wednesday night basketball game. Rutgers versus Illinois. I can feel it right now. It's a 38-41 game with 1 minute left to go. You're like, how is this game so? And that's exactly the feeling of that bowl game the other day and what they wanted to do, and they executed. But that's a value. That's a great astute pickup that you put up, because they went to the well and pulled out some old school tricks with that, with offensive lineman tackle over stuff.
You alluded to Alex Huntley being part of a trick play. He was open. He was there.
He was open.
You got to hit it. How many times did young Langston Moore go to Lou Holtz and say, "Hey, I can get open. Get me the ball"?
Never, not at all. Lou Holtz put me in as like an extra fullback under the auspices, like, yeah, you're a fullback. No, you're an extra offensive lineman, defensive lineman playing that. But if you just want to know how bad Langston Moore's hands is, there's probably a Gamecock fan that remembers we went up to play Virginia. We played a tough team earlier on, and they dropped me in coverage, and I proceeded to pick the ball off, Jay, and I had an interception in the end zone. I had 100 yards, probably 105 yards to go, and I immediately fumbled the ball, and they picked it up and scored. And no, they didn't have to pick it up. They just recovered it right there in the end zone. So that's why I don't touch the football very much. But to my point, I can talk trash about Kyle Crow and those guys throwing the ball. The Boogie has a touchdown. I think he's like 1 for 1. So, I mean, it was 100%. Forget Lenore Sellers at that point, man. Throw it to the guy who's got 100% in the red zone passing.
Yeah,
that's analytics, man. That's what the analytics are telling you. Those are numbers.
What it is. Lou didn't look at the analytics back then. It was just all gut from Coach Holtz. A little bit more on the bowl game and the Gamecocks with Langston. Get into a few NFL thoughts as the final weekend of the regular season is upon us. It is the Friday afternoon postgame show. Oh, listen, I've had my new Toro mower. I say it's new. It's not new anymore. It's now a veteran of cutting the grass in my backyard, my front yard, side, wherever I've got to go use that thing. It's great this time of year, too, to help me kind of just vac up the leaves, if you will. I'm doing it quicker than ever. If you are ready to start, listen, you got to do yard work, okay? You got to do yard work sometimes. And that's cool. Again, I like doing some yard work. I just don't want to do it all the time. time to get into Cato's Power Equipment and let them outfit you just like a tailor with the equipment that would be perfect for what you need for your yard. How big is your yard? How much work do you do? How much do you let somebody else go do? Ben and Matt and the crew will get you fitted with everything that you possibly need. And now a whole great line of Toro, Gravely, Steel products that are battery powered, easier to use, less to break. Stop in and see them. 4012 West Beltline Boulevard. Online, catospowerequipment.com. They'll get you doing yard work right here in 2025. My friends at Cato's. $18 minutes after 4 o'clock on this Friday afternoon. Happy New Year to all. Welcome back into the Postgame Show. A question I ask all the time, when's it too late? Listen, if I haven't spoken to somebody in a couple of weeks, now I've spoken to you, obviously, Mr. Campbell, and Langston Moore joins us on the guest line, and we've told him Happy New Year. But, like, if we have a guest in a couple of weeks that I haven't spoken with in the calendar year as it turned, then I'm going to say Happy New Year to them.
But when do you stop doing it?
February.
Because there are probably some people that you haven't seen, you won't see for the month of January.
Right. Somebody asked me that, like, what if you don't have somebody on until, like, April? Well, no, I will not say Happy New Year to them in April. But I will say, it's been a while. How you doing? But in January, I will say that.
Because you've opened up a rabbit hole now to where you have to say Happy New Year, Happy
nice
or
person.
Merry, insert holiday that person celebrates all the way up until
that's maybe
you
true.
might have missed.
Maybe true, but I'll pick and choose as I see fit. But Happy New Year. So Happy New Year, y'all. If you're traveling back up from Florida, hope you had a good time.
Yeah, Happy New Year.
If you're traveling down from, I don't know, the mountains, Happy New Year.
Or if you just stayed.
Yep. Langston, we asked you, this is the second time you've been with us this week, which we do very humbly appreciate. But I did ask you about, the traditional New Year's meal. How did yours go? We need to do that. We did it at our house, mac and cheese, collards that cooked for about 8 hours. Oh, yeah. Had ribs that cooked for about 6 or 7 hours. I did some drumsticks. They were only on for about 3 hours, but they were really good. And then what else? Black-eyed peas and cornbread. I feel like I'm forgetting something. That might have been it. How was yours?
Yeah, it was outstanding. I think we just finished out that pot about 1:30, 2 o'clock last night. You know what I'm saying? So, black-eyed peas, greens. Of course, I had to have that rice, and however it comes together, it just ends up being a one big old mash at one point with me. So, put the pepper vinegar on there, we good, and then. What else did we do? We did some Charleston Chewies a little bit. I think we busted that out a little bit.
Oh.
So I don't know if y'all familiar with those. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
It is very addictive. Just when I thought I've turned the corner on this sugar habit, I make some Chewies, and everybody's like, "Where the rest of them?" I was like, "I told you they were down here. And if you didn't come down here when they were hot, I mean, that's on you. I mean,
you know what I've started doing with my collards, and I'll do this throughout the year when I make them. I've started now to put the vinegar into the pot while they cook.
Yeah, Jay, definitely. But the key is, are you putting white vinegar? You putting apple cider vinegar? What
Cider vinegar.
Okay.
And then I don't put, instead of putting it, then I just put like a lot of pepper flakes, like the red pepper flakes.
I see.
Yeah. Just let that go. Yeah.
Yep.
And a little sugar. Depending on whether my vegetarian daughters are home or not, like they were this time. So I put smoked paprika instead of a ham hock.
Okay.
And it works.
That goes a long way.
It works.
Goes a long way.
Yeah, it works. And a lot of salt, some broth, a little garlic and onion. It was good, man. It's good.
That's it. That's it. Again, just good old eating right there.
Let's talk more football. I do, and Elijah and I talked about this. We've spent some time, and I'm really going to put it to rest after today. But we did want your take as a former player, both at the college and professional level, on the Nick Emmanwori situation. And again, we've said many times we're not here to beat up on him, but it was a bad look. He said last night it was a miscommunication. I would say, Langston, it was a lack of communication, and based on the questions I have asked around the program the last couple of days, there was no communication prior to him telling an assistant coach at halftime. That's what I've gathered. How do you look? And I know there's even been some players quote. I know Mike Yuba had a piece at Gamecock Central that quoted a player anonymously that said, "Yeah, we didn't know anything about it." Take us through how you look at this through the eyes of a player.
Well, through the eyes of a player, and again, there's a lot of context within that. What kind of player are we talking about? In the context of Nick Emmanwori, one of the very few All-Americans that we've ever had the privilege of having at South Carolina. Not that we hadn't had a whole bunch of great players, but all we got to do is look up on that wall, and there's only so many, and Nick is probably one of the latest ones that we've had. So, again, he's a good student, good kid, all of those different things, and, of course, going to go on to be a high draft pick, maybe one of the first safeties taken off the board. So the context of, is he playing to protect himself, but also, it's kind of a funny deal of, in the new era that we're in where guys are trying to maximize every dollar with NIL, but also trying to maximize, not getting hurt. I played and we used to work out with a guy from Hawaii, Brennan, the quarterback kid, who, he had the insurance and all those different things and had a wreck before he got drafted, and he got paid. He got paid by not actually playing football. Now, he still got drafted, but ended up, battling a whole bunch of different things and succumbed to addiction and overdose, some years ago. But, people talked about the argument, well, you either be all in with that. There's a lot of different variables to that, and one of the things I also think about is what's going on with the team. So for a lot of guys, coaches or different programs will have a deal where it's, all or nothing. Either you're playing, I know you got your NFL stuff, but if you're not playing, you can't be a part of it. And so as a kid, as a captain, you're like, So do I have to kind of make a choice where I want to be down there, I want to be out there, I want to be a good example for that deal? And I think that's one of the situation with this happened, where no good deed goes unpunished. You're trying to selfishly trying to maybe be there for your teammate, be there for yourself, and go out there and play, but not try to get hurt. But also, if you tell the coaches, if this happens, they're not going to, because obviously there were two guys that were there but they weren't even on the sideline. And I played for a coach who was a taskmaster, and because again, for a lot of these guys, the coaches and the staff are turning the page on this year, and this bowl game is kind of indicative of that. We've already talked about these being really spring games and getting yourself together and all these different things. So really, for a guy like that, you're kind of stuck in this, this gray area where you're getting ready for the draft. You want to be a part of the team, but you want to figure out, and there's still a lot of other emotional attack. My point is, everything could have been done better, coach's side, player side, regardless. But at the end of the day, it's one of those deals where Nick is somebody that I think we always will keep in the fold of the fabric, and this shouldn't be the last thing that we always remember about him trying to do something a certain way to be a part of the game, and however it turned out. Because again, I've been a part of it where a guy like Kalimba Edwards and Lou Holtz, for this day, they just kind of had these two things going against them. And so unknown to anybody outside of that, unless coach made it known that it was a pet peeve to him, and Lim not showing up. And again, there was a lot of ways to handle that, but still to this day, when it boils down to it, you're an old man, you want to kind of have that memory, you want to be there. And because again, that draft stuff is fleeting. As somebody as myself, you think, oh man, you're like, damn, I wish I was there that night before. I wish the plane ride back home the next day. These are the things you always want to remember. So point being is, we only got so many of these guys. I think Nick, put out the apology, but also too, it's one of those deals where we love them, we're gonna move forward, and I think there's really nothing else to really talk about.
Yeah,
that.
no, that's well said. You're right. It won't be the last thing, and he said I'll take some accountability for it. You wish it was handled better, but that's where it is. Speaking of the Gamecock defense, and this isn't really about the bowl game anymore, and this is really starting to look ahead, and yet the continuation, Clayton White with a nice raise. Ultimately, the contract will take him above $2 million a year. How are you looking at what Clayton has built? How good is this for South Carolina football to put him where the market says he should be as they continue to build?
$2 million a year. Well, I wonder if you ask Clayton, did you ever think, man? Did you think you would have to be a head coach to get $2 million a year? But it's a great time, and timing is great, and however the mitigating factors that get you to where you're at, God bless it. But retention, having a guy like that, the staff, I think that's one of the things we've always been talking about with just like the program and wanting to have the continuity. And so again, keeping him in the fold, but also keeping all the subsequent guys within him. Sterling, Coach Trevarian, all of these different guys, and because that's not always an easy task. So I think keeping them there, the continuity, the verbiage, having the guys look to him, but also going out on a recruiting trail and showing folks that there's a reason why he demands that type of salary, because we putting these guys in the league, look at the stats, look at the defense, and it goes all the way back to not this season, but the last kind of couple games when he made the adjustments. And that's always a tough thing with guys, with coordinators and coaches. And, I always talk about you, Jay, with your guy, Sean Payton, that one of the reasons he's always going to be successful, even though he's kind of cantankerous, old, kind of SOB, one of the last kind of Parcellius, Sheehan type of guys out there, his willingness to do untraditional things in the NFL, a la get a quarterback from BYU and just run the triple option sometimes when all of that stuff, that's what's going to keep you invigorated, and that's where hopefully Bill Belichick does some stuff like that. But point being is having a young guy like that on our staff bodes well for us with recruiting, continuity, all those different things, and keep getting that money, Clay. Next time I see you, I need let me hold $1. How much $1 cost, man? Let me get $1.
I still think that, Lou Holtz wanted two things when he came to Columbia. He wanted $1 million salary, and he wanted membership at Augusta National. That's it.
And he got both. I also love the best story ever when Lou Holtz first got the job, and Dr. Palms was like, "Please don't mention the salary." And Lou's like, "I'm embarrassed too. I won't mention it at all."
All right. Before we get Langston out of here, on the other side, we'll get into this weekend's final NFL regular season games. His Bengals can get in. My Broncos can get in. His Bengals hurt my Broncos last week. And who should be the MVP in Langston Moore's opinion? We'll do that when the postgame show returns.
From the WIS Traffic Studios, I'm Elijah Campbell. The few accidents to get to you that are causing some issues on the roadways, but we'll start with some good news, and that's that the accident previously reported on I-20 eastbound at Broad River Road near exit 65 has since been cleared, so traffic moving much more smoothly through that area. We still have one accident, however, that is causing some issues over on Parkland Road near Highway 555 and Farrow Road.
Talking Gamecock football, get into a little CFP and NFL as our good friend Langston Moore joins us. And now a great time, if you haven't already, to go to athletesandartists.net. Some of the latest merch, swag, or any other term the kids use these days available. Athletesandartists.net. You got some great T-shirts and, of course, all the information on the Just a Chicken series of books. If you didn't get those for your young Gamecock reader for Christmas, well, then you can get them to start the new semester, or they have a birthday coming up. All right. You got Just a Chicken Little, Used to Was a Rooster. Langston just mentioned the Butt and Gut podcast that the Illinois coach would have been on in a previous life, but will no longer be welcome.
No. We got an X-nay on Brett Bill.
Yeah.
Coming on the show.
But all those things. But some of the new merch, and there's even a fun, I guess it's not a commercial. Well, it's kind of a commercial. With Ryan Brewer featured on the field at Williams-Brice, like that, is showing off some of the merch, right?
Yeah, it's just showing off what he can do. You know, we got the shirt on him. Like I said, that may or may not be an accurate depiction of what Ryan Brewer looks like right now. We got some Steven Garcia ones. I think there's one with Deuce out there somewhere, flexing his. I know Deuce Aureli's not that big, but it's cool to put together some of these attention-grabbing things, and it's cool to let the design guys mess around with some of this cool stuff. But don't worry, we will have your package there shortly, and Elijah will be able to eat those packets of Cheez-Its. I heard he got a whole trough of Cheez-Its from the bowl, so hopefully we can get you the new Beamer sweatshirt and the Cheez-It white. What'd you say? White cheddar was the leader.
That's one of my kids' favorites. Did you have the Buffalo one, by the way?
Yes, I did have the Buffalo.
Did you bring
one.
any back?
Really enjoyed it. I
Clearly
could not put enough in my pocket.
It's too bad.
See the Buffalo ones were not packaged, right?
Just in a bowl.
They had like a little cardboard stadium that was there in the press box, a large cardboard stadium, and each section of that stadium were different Cheez-Its. So you grab a cup and you'd fill it up, and they just eat the entire game. I ate so many Cheez-Its during that game.
Elijah, how much loose Cheez-It was a non-packaged loose? Because I saw my man in the and like you said, it was a trough. So did they just gather all the troughs that were placed around like hand sanitizer stations around the stadium and put that guy who was broadcasting from the Cheez-It bowl? I don't know what
that thing was, man. It was like a container full, and he was like swimming in it.
Like a tub.
His foot was in it, everything. And I was wondering if a guy, the sideline reporter, is going to be brave enough to eat. But I'm saying, I know you love your job, but please. So how much loose Cheez-It was around there? Non-bagged Cheez-It was out there during your time at the bowl game, Elijah?
Thankfully, the only non-bagged Cheez-Its was that, from what I encountered, was that, right? And I hope that passed the sanitation test. But I would not be. I love Cheez-Its now, but if there's, if it's within close vicinity of someone's barefoot, I'm not eating.
No,
I will eat 0-foot Cheez-Its.
Not doing that.
Not doing that.
That won't be one flavor they come out with, foot Cheez-It.
Ooh, yeah. I mean, if they made that as a flavored Cheez-It, I would try it out of curiosity.
Sure.
But not if it was not if that was the process, right?
This sounds like a product somebody would sell on the OnlyFans page who also sells other foot products and videos. I do not know. I don't know. Let's not go too far down this rabbit hole.
Probably lucrative. I mean, if we're being honest with ourselves.
We in the wrong business selling books. Let's sell foot Cheez-It crackers and these videos, Jay.
We're all capitalists
These things will not, let me repeat, not be available at athletesandartists.net.
Most definitely. Preston Thorne will fire me for. But don't you ever bring up foot stuff on ever
I did not
again.
think foot Cheez-Its would be a topic of discussion today, but here we are. That's why you tune into the show.
It's about creativity. It's about creativity, man.
I can keep going, but I better
Revenue.
not. So we'll steer this car back into the to the lane instead of on that
Regular
bumpy
Cheez-Its are
thing
fine.
on the interstate where we are right now. All right, final weekend of the NFL regular season. We got one wild card spot up for grabs in the AFC. If Denver beats Kansas City, they're in regardless of what the Dolphins or Bengals do. And then in the NFC, either the Falcons or Bucks are going to win the South, and that's it. Now, I asked you on Monday, what do you think that the Chiefs will do? And it does look like Andy's not going to play the frontline guys. I'll be perfectly honest with you. I love the Broncos. I wanted to make it. I still am scared to death of what the Chiefs will do in Denver on Sunday.
Carson Wentz, huh? You going to go to the Chiefs here and Carson Wentz? Ooh, yes. Carson Wentz is going to come out there slinging that thing. It's going to be like somebody said, it's going to be like his playoff game. It's going to be his, because, I'm not too far removed. And it's like a pickup game, man. I'm going into the gym and I got, 2 or 3 old. Is that old Sedarius Thornwell over there who used to play for the Gamecocks? That's probably what it kind of feels like at an open run. No disrespect to a professional team in the Denver Broncos, but I still think it's going to be a tooth and nail game. But the familiarity and the back and forth and Sean Payton kind of being who he is, this might be something to, you know what I'm saying? You might have a hope, but what hope also does, man, it just strangles you at the end. But if Denver is fortunate enough to get through these guys and get through the mighty vaunted Carson Wentz led Kansas City Chiefs, y'all gonna have to play the Buffalo Bills, man. So, congratulations. I don't know.
The thing that's weird, and I wish the NFL would borrow from English soccer and have all these games play at the same time, so there's a little bit more drama. Cincinnati plays Saturday night, so Denver's going to know. There's one team out, and honestly, look, the Dolphins go to the Jets. Now, I think the Dolphins will probably still win even without Tua. But that's an interesting little dynamic there. But Cincinnati actually favored in Pittsburgh by 2.5. That's how well the Bengals are playing Langston. They're 2 wins off of Pittsburgh, but they're playing much better football.
Just much better football. Joe Burrow, of course. T. Higgins now, he wants to stay. But it's just atrocious defense. And again, it just harkens me back to did the cheap daddy in the household just mess up Christmas? You know what I'm saying? We can only so many years we can get M&Ms, Jay, instead of really M&Ms. My dad out there getting N&Ns and stuff like that. You're getting the off-brand stuff, right? And so I think trying to get this off-brand defense. Yeah, you ship Joe Mixon out of there and you try to do it by running. I don't even know who the running backs are because they change up every. So I just feel like all of this. Yeah, Joe, you got Joe Burrow, but it's just coming back to man. You're just making Joe Burrow do all these MVP-esque things, and it's still not going to be good enough, and it's still not going to win him the MVP race. So it's just what are we doing? We don't want to waste these years, but it just feels like the cheapness of the Bengals is kind of biting them in the butt again with all of this stuff.
All right, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Saquon Barkley, Joe Burrow. Langston Moore gets a vote for the MVP, and his vote goes to
Lamar Jackson, 43 touchdowns, I think. I mean, getting close to 4,000 yards. I thought he has thrown for those yards before in the past, but it just goes back to how gaudy his numbers are. I just told you, Joe Burrow, I think 8 straight games, 250-plus yards, 3 touchdowns a game. 3 touchdowns a game in 8 straight games. That's sick. Saquon Barkley, too. I mean, so all of these are video game numbers, but I just think it's Josh Allen. And the whole point of MVP is if you remove this guy from the team, Cincinnati Bengals, we know what happens if you remove Joe Burrow. We've seen this before, but we ain't even talking about you barely being the a Cheez-It foot fart of being into the playoff. That's not going to happen for y'all. But take MVP Josh Allen away from the Buffalo Bills, and it's a completely different AFC. It's a completely different team. And so I think with that caveat plus all the gaudy great things that he's done and the numbers to back it up, I think it has to be Josh Allen. That has to be the MVP.
Yeah, and you and I have had this conversation. I'm completely on board with the usage of the word valuable, and we talked about this a little bit ago. That using the baseball wins above replacement. Nothing against Saquon, who's having a hell of a year, but if you give me a running back that's doing 80% of what Saquon did this year, which would still be an awesome season, the Eagles are right where they are. I'm with you, man. I mean, without Lamar, the Ravens not a playoff team. Without Josh, Bills, not a playoff team. And without Burrow, Bengals aren't even in this discussion. they should be a playoff team. So, man, I mean, Lamar has the highest QBR in the league.
Yeah.
39 touchdowns, only 4 interceptions, Langston.
And that's how you know when it's so great. Like you just kind of that number you just threw out is sick. On top of 800 something rushing yards and 43 touchdowns, you just like, oh man, because this is a 2-time consecutive winning MVP, and this is where it gets kind of like you hate the redundancy of this, where like Lamar, we don't want to see you win another MVP. It'd be great. But we're going to say, like, that's what you should be doing. I want to see a Super Bowl trophy for them. Yeah. And that's what this feels like this season is for Lamar. Forget that if he did get the MVP trophy, that means in my mind he didn't get the Super Bowl trophy, which, again, feels like a letdown, which it sounds crazy to say.
He's also rushed 130 times for 852 yards and 4 scores, 6.6 yards per carry.
That leads the league, by the way, in yards per
carry. When he runs the ball. I mean, he's phenomenal. I was telling Elijah this morning, Langston, he's not turned into like he's turned into a megastar quarterback.
Megastar, leader, all of that. And again, the biggest thing I want to see for him is just, again, as he goes, I just had this vision in my head last year, him throwing his helmet down on the ground. Zay Flowers follows suit, throws his helmet on the ground, messes his little finger up. And again, it wasn't the biggest thing, but it all led into, like, you got to have the go to the next level of it. And I know what that angst and all that throwing the helmet stuff comes from, but yeah, phenomenal star. Shout out to Travell Wharton, former Gamecock offensive line coach out there for the Baltimore Ravens. Out there doing the X's and O's and doing the old grunt man skinny guy. He's skinny now, so he ain't an old kind of offensive line. But out there, it's always good to see the Gamecocks out there in the park coaching those guys up. That responsive rushing attack.
We always appreciate you, sir. Again, Happy New Year to the wife and daughter, and we'll holler at you here soon. Enjoy all the football this weekend. Appreciate you.
Absolutely. Y'all be safe.
That's our good friend Langston Moore, athletesandartists.net. And you can follow him on Twitter. Remove the chains, the way to do that. Lots more to do on this Friday postgame show. Welcome back in. Final few minutes of our second hour here on this Friday. Jay and Elijah with you. Thanks, as always, to Langston Moore for joining us. Might just want to catch the Langston interview on the podcast page later on.
You should.
Didn't know we were going to get into some of the things we got into there. That's the beauty
if you like specialty flavored Cheez-Its.
of a Friday show, yes.
My favorite thing is when something like that happens and watching the discomfort on your face slowly grow.
Well, I just didn't know we were going to do something about OnlyFans and feet and Cheez-Its.
I didn't either.
I didn't know that. I did not. I assure you, I did not have that on today's bingo card.
It's like watching an Alabama-Auburn football game. You didn't think you'd see a kick run back for a touchdown to end a football game. You've never seen a kick return touchdown to end a football game on a field goal. But sometimes it happens. It's organic.
Yeah. Oh, it was
Cheez-Its.
definitely. That's the beauty of a. That's why. I mean, we have roughly 50-something Fridays a year, right? That's the way the calendar works. Langston's probably on 30-something of them.
Yeah, a majority.
And that's
The
why
math works.
Yeah, that's why we do it, man. Because of things like that. Forget about the football expertise. Yeah.
I will say though,
Yes.
I am so upset after experiencing a Cheez-It Citrus Bowl,
Yes.
covering that and the amount of Cheez-Its you're exposed to.
Yes.
I am really upset that there is no SEC tie-in to the Pop-Tarts Bowl, and South Carolina can never, until they change the bowl tie-ins, play in a Pop-Tarts Bowl.
Yeah.
Because I would do numbers.
That's a fair point.
I'd be wheelchaired out of that press box.
I do love. Listen, we have. You should. If you went into our pantry right now, you would see. We currently have 2 family-size boxes of Cheez-Its. One is the extra cheddar, and the other is the extra toasty.
The extra toasty's fantastic.
Oh my God, the extra toasty Cheez-It.
Fantastic.
Because listen, even I can go back because my grandparents. I remember my grandparents loved Cheez-Its. Have been around forever, right? I mean, they've been around forever. But I do remember because for decades, man, all you got was the Cheez-It, just the original Cheez-It. But they would have clearly the ones that were at the end of the line as the oven was cooking the Cheez-It. Ever since I was a little kid, I loved the ones that would have the little extra burn, the extra toasty.
They're great.
And now they've been around maybe 10 years in the extra toast, they just toast the whole thing. And now you know what I love is the extra toasty.
I didn't know that was a thing.
Well, it's not, except that you can find the one that's almost brown. And I'm like, give me that one. And my girls would be like, Dad, you want that? Yes, I do.
Yes, I do. Give it.
And now I have come to mix. If you get a bowl, you got to be gentle with it, obviously. I'll mix half extra toasty and half of the Tabasco.
The Tabasco's really good.
And I'm telling you, you can thank me later if you hadn't tried that.
That was my high school thing. I'm my high school snack of choice if I was just eating in class. Tabasco cheese.
They're awesome, and they're not spicy. They got a little zip, All right, so Buffalo, which I've not had. Now, no, that's a newer one that you can't get everywhere.
Yeah, it was good.
Any other cool, obscure, experimental flavors of Cheez-It that were available to you beyond
Monterey
the Buffalo?
Jack was really good.
I've had that.
That was a good one.
And
I never had that one before.
We just got a text from our buddy Ben Cato. He likes the Cheddar Jack.
Yes.
That's yeah.
Yeah.
Those my girls love those. Yeah, and I do too. But again, I'm an extra toasty. If I'm always getting to choose, it'll be extra toasty or Tabasco.
Yeah, I never actually tried the white cheddar ones.
Those are very
until
good.
I was in Orlando.
Yep.
And I was hooked.
Yeah.
I would get cupfuls of that by itself after a while.
See, when somebody said there was a Buffalo Cheez-It, I was thinking too, what would be good? Because I like blue cheese instead of ranch with wings.
Same.
If you give me a Buffalo blue,
without a doubt,
Cheez-It. Ooh. So to the folks at Cheez-It, Kellogg's or Sunshine or whatever owns them now. I don't know who owns you anymore. I don't care as long as you keep making Cheez-Its.
Yeah, I was going to say, as long as it tastes the way it does.
A Buffalo blue cheese.
Hubba. That's the good stuff.
So can we, somebody find a way.
We have to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Or make just a legitimate. I know they have a hot and spicy cheese. They have that there. Make it hotter. Can we push the limits?
Okay. Yeah.
I'd like for us to just to make it a little hotter. I'm a big spice guy.
Well, I'll tell you what you can do with that. I've done this with a few things too. Just if you got some cayenne pepper in the pantry.
I do love cayenne pepper.
Just get you a few shakes of cayenne and just gently toss that bag
As
I'll
somebody
put that on like potato chips.
who
I've done
loves
that.
like the Nashville hot chicken, which
Yeah.
the main ingredient is just a lot of cayenne pepper.
I've sometimes taken like a bag of barbecue chips. You gently, like around the edge, inside, you sprinkle some cayenne, and you don't shake it. You just kind of tumble it.
There was I think it was Lay's made a Carolina Reaper chip, and it was really good. It was hot. It is really good. Can Cheez-It replicate that?
Well, they can.
Where
They just need to go do it.
They just got to, they have to do it.
So there you go. I'd like to think that in the next 5 minutes, headlines of the day would feature that Cheez-It will indeed have a Buffalo Blue or something hotter, but I probably won't. But I do have headlines of the day for you. The EBPI is in full effect next hour as we get you ready, not just for tomorrow's conference opener for the Gamecock men, but for the entire conference slate.
We've been crunching film, baby.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, well, you're actually not lying. So we got a lot more to do, plus a drive around the SEC in the final hour of the program.
From the WIS Traffic Studios, I'm Elijah Campbell. The few accidents to get to that are causing some issues on the roadways, starting with one on Bull Street near Elmwood Avenue. That one's causing some minor traffic backup. We have a grass fire, it looks like, on I-26 westbound that's over near US 301 and exit 154. That is causing some traffic issues as well on 26. And then in Richland County here, we have an accident on Killian Road over at I-77.
It is 5 o'clock news time on this Friday. Welcome back in. It's also the final hour of the Postgame Show alongside Elijah Campbell. I'm Jay Phillips. Appreciate you being with us. We start with the college football playoff. The semifinals set this after last night's 23-10 win by Notre Dame over the Georgia Bulldogs. A game, of course, that was postponed by about 18 hours, 20 hours because of the terrible attack and tragedy in New Orleans. A game that, in my estimation, really was a throwback to defensive struggles of decades gone by. I told Elijah and a few others I felt like Notre Dame's defense was playing like the Florida State defense of the 1990s, just flying to the ball, moving guys out of the way, not letting you ever get comfortable. And that's exactly what Notre Dame did last night. Huge credit to their coaching staff for finding so many ways, I keep using this term, Elijah, to get clean looks and just come unabated against Gunnar Stockton. They did it a couple times on special teams, too. Really, the Georgia defense was outstanding yesterday. Absolutely outstanding.
In prime form. Man.
They were. I mean, it's if you only see a score, you say, well, Notre Dame won comfortably. And in essence, they kind of did. But, again, a series of events at the very end of the second quarter and to literally open the third quarter with the kick return for a score was the only those were the only two touchdowns that Notre Dame scored. Again, Georgia had forced a Notre Dame punt with the Irish up 6-3. They got the ball back. They were probably going to run the clock out, but then Gunnar Stockton got sacked. Notre Dame got the ball with the 12, 15, somewhere in there. I forget exactly where it was. Scored on the next play. And Georgia did run the clock out at that point at the end of the second quarter. And we were still here, and Elijah came out of the door and said, hey, Notre Dame just ran the kickoff back for a score to start the second half. And that was it. Other than that, 3 field goals. But Georgia could only muster a field goal and a touchdown themselves. Just again, never got comfortable. So both defenses outstanding. Notre Dame took advantage of the Georgia mistakes, and there were several Georgia mistakes. This was not an outstanding Georgia team, and yet it was a Georgia team that beat Texas twice and won the Southeastern Conference. So, and now there's one SEC team left. Texas will be playing Ohio State next week. The Horns will go into that one, at least as for now, as 6-point underdogs, and Notre Dame has been installed as a 1.5-point favorite over Penn State. That one's going to be in Miami, and that's next Thursday night. Greg Sankey had petitioned, if you will, before the game, the CFP higher-ups to switch the dates of next week's games, to have this game, the winner of this game play on Friday and move the Friday game to Thursday, without getting, that they're not going to do it. And I told Terry and Tyler earlier, and I'm not being a smart aleck when I say this, even though I can often be that guy, I assure you. So I'm not knocking anybody, but Notre Dame is going to have a week. I mean, you play on Saturday, and then you play the following Saturday. They played on Thursday, and they're going to play on Thursday. So I don't think it's anything that's going to really detract. And quite honestly, I made this point too. I think the last thing that a lot of 18 to 22-year-olds want to do is be told, hey, guess what? You get a whole other extra day of film sessions.
Woo.
They don't want that.
They do enough of that.
They want to go play football, right? So I don't think it's going to matter all that much. But the game in Miami, yes, it's technically the Orange Bowl. I'm not. Y'all know that by now.
They don't even play it in the Orange Bowl anymore. The Orange Bowl,
no, the old
exists.
Orange Bowl's gone, man. Orange Bowl's gone. But I don't think it's going to be that big a deal. I really don't. No. And some are saying, well, Texas is getting a home game. Well, not really. Ohio State will. I promise you.
They travel.
They will travel.
They travel pretty well.
Yeah. So, but we'll see. But the semis are set with just one SEC team. You know, I used hyperbole on purpose this morning. I was listening to a couple of things on Get Up and, a couple other shows. I know those that are tired of SEC dominance are celebrating right now because there's only one SEC team left, and it's Texas.
The team that was not in the SEC. Was not in the SEC.
Even if Sark has admitted that since he's been in Austin and they knew they were coming, he's been building an SEC team. And he's proven that in terms of especially the big ones up front and what they do on defense and things like that. I think if you're trying to kick dirt on the SEC coffin, you're going to be mistaken. But I also think that the SEC is at a point where some of the schools will need to really figure out what the future is going to look like. You're going to borrow from what South Carolina and Mississippi and Vanderbilt and Missouri and a couple of others have done through the portal. Bama has been reluctant. Georgia has been reluctant to do it in a wholesale change kind of a way. I think those things will all begin to morph as we move on. And one of the things I've learned in any iteration, Elijah, of college football through the years and now decades, the powers that be always find a way to remain part of the powers that be. Rare exceptions like Nebraska are kind of have fallen by the wayside. I don't know that Nebraska ever really gets it back. We'll see. But Bama, Georgia, LSU, Florida, I think they're going to find their way back into the fold in the not too distant future.
Well, without getting too much into the history here, I mean, I think one of the reasons why you are seeing other non-SEC teams be a little more competitive, or teams in the SEC that weren't as competitive maybe before the NIL space, maybe start to become a lot more competitive, is because they will start to be able to do a lot of the things other schools have been doing under the table,
right? Be
able to do it openly. Think about Nebraska, right? They were pioneers in strength training and weightlifting back in the 60s and 70s. Then that's how they built their dominance. Yeah. And all it took was people copycatting that, and then everybody started doing that. And then ultimately, when Tom Osborne leaves, becomes the athletic director, they lose that advantage because by the time 1998 rolls around, when that happens, everyone's doing what they did, right? They start doing a lot of those things, and then everybody else becomes good. It's kind of the similar way. And that, I'm not saying this is how Alabama and Georgia no longer, have the stranglehold on football. They'll evolve, right? Not every year will Alabama and Georgia combine to lose 7 games like they did this year. Yeah. Think about that. Alabama and Georgia lost 7 football games in the year of our Lord, 2024. 8 if you count the Rose Bowl in the previous football season.
I know what you mean.
But either way, I don't think this loss is as much an indictment on the SEC as some would like to parade around.
Right.
Folks, there's good football played outside the SEC.
Right.
I hate to break it to you. There's really good college football played outside the Southeast United States. And I've been trying to tell people about Notre Dame's defense who would listen that Georgia's not going to have a good time against a Notre Dame defense. Somebody making their first career college football start as a quarterback against that defense is going to be put in a torture chamber because they're really good. A lot of people like to throw dirt on Indiana and say they didn't belong in the playoff because of what Notre Dame did to them, without realizing Notre Dame's good because they just hadn't watched Notre Dame since the Northern Illinois loss. I think a lot of people stopped watching and keeping up with Notre Dame after the Northern Illinois loss because it was the most inexplicable loss during the college football season. But newsflash, they played. The schedule wasn't daunting, but they beat the hell out of everyone they played.
They had only one of their wins. They've now won 13
really
games. They've won, and only one win was by single digits.
Yeah.
And that was a good Louisville team.
Yeah, and a game in which it rained and it was nasty. The conditions
they won by 7.
Were really weird.
Every other game they've won by at least 10 points, and many of them by 20 or more. They have not just been winning, much like Indiana. They have been dominating games, And Notre Dame is excellent.
That's a really good football team. I think people didn't want to give Notre Dame their props because they were too busy dumping on Indiana.
Yeah, I agree.
I tweeted the night after it happened, I see a lot of you haven't watched a lot of Notre Dame this year.
Yeah.
And I don't blame you for jumping ship when they lost that game.
Yeah.
A lot of people did.
Yeah.
But that's a damn good football team. That defense is as good as anybody in the country, not because they're big, because they're fast.
They're fast, man. And like I said, that's
fast.
why they reminded me. I was watching, and I know a Notre Dame friend of mine didn't. I even texted him, and I said, "Hear me out," was what I said first. And I put a colon. I was like, "Hear me out, colon." Notre Dame is playing like 90s FSU defense because they had some things back in the day, and nobody, so he might not have wanted.
And a lot of
he may not have wanted to hear me say that, but I made the point of saying that's how good they looked last night. And again, I thought the Georgia defense, Riley Leonard threw for 90 yards, man. Yeah. They only ran for like $160. Notre Dame didn't do anything offensively worth a darn. Again, they got a kick return for 100 yards, and they had a 15-yard short field turnover touchdown.
Riley Leonard ran the ball, used his legs well enough to move the chains long enough for them to hold the ball.
That one big run he had right up the middle, that was one of the plays of the game. And then Notre Dame causing the confusion and making Georgia jump, in the fourth quarter.
A good coach. That's a Marcus Freeman coaching thing.
That's a good team.
Kirby kind of got outfoxed in that game in a lot of different ways.
Can they make people pull for them?
Dare I say this is kind of a likable Notre Dame team, which has never really been a thing.
I think because Marcus Freeman is likable.
Yes, I love that guy.
I think it helped. Brian Kelly is like hugging a porcupine.
That's a nice way of putting
it. And I don't think Marcus Freeman is at all. I think he's the opposite. And honestly, look, I'd like to see Notre Dame get it done. I don't know that I'm pulling for anyone. I don't know that I was going in, to be honest with you. Might have been, I don't know if I'm pulling against anybody either, really. I'm trying to think of it. Maybe one, but they lost.
They're already done.
So, beyond that, look, it's going to be a first time head coach as a champion. That'll be good. That's we need those storylines. Penn State, it's been a long time, and so one of Notre Dame or Penn State's going to play for the title. In fact, I think Penn State's last title was what, 86?
I think, or was it 86?
86, 87, somewhere in there. Right. Yeah. And then Notre Dame with Lou.
88.
So it's been a long time for both of those schools, and one of them's going to get the shot. And then I think the rest of the country, is going to probably pull against some insufferable fan bases in Texas and Ohio State in their minds.
When we hear the spiciest take I've concocted since this Notre Dame-Georgia game, the biggest coaching upgrade anyone did in the 2021 coaching cycle was Brian Kelly leaving Notre Dame and then elevating their own defensive coordinator. That was such a big loss for them at the time.
Right.
And those players were devastated that he left. Notre Dame ultimately ended up coming out on top.
Look at them now.
I think they have the better football.
And they're using the portal well. So I like to see that too. There's great management with the roster and with the attitude. So good story there. But Notre Dame wins last night. Again, Georgia did not play poorly in the sense that they were dominated throughout. Again, and I'm not here to say Georgia should have won. I'm not doing that either. No. But really, if you don't have that screw up at the end of the second quarter, what do things look like? Not to say that you wouldn't return a kick, but that's neither here nor there. Notre Dame absolutely earned the win, 23-10. Again, they'll play next Thursday down in Miami against Penn State. Next Friday, Texas and Ohio State in Dallas. Speaking of the CFP in Indiana, last thing in our integrated media headlines of the day, this came out earlier through his agent, but Indiana's Curtis Rourke played all season. You hear me right. All season with a torn right ACL. He is going to have surgery next week to repair it ahead of the draft. Mel Kiper currently has him as the number 6 quarterback prospect in the draft. He was the MAC Player of the Year at Ohio before he transferred to Indiana. He did miss one game this season, but remember that was when he got hurt his thumb, and people were worried about what Indiana might do. But he was fantastic. He finished top 10 in the Heisman voting this year. But hard to believe that he played an entire season with a torn right ACL. So best of luck to Curtis Rourke, and we'll see what happens with him moving forward. That's our integrated media headlines of the day. Make sure you hit up integrated media, especially ahead of all these big games. Now's a great time, right? Ahead of the playoffs, like at least at the pro level. College basketball season is coming up for you in a big way, and soon enough it'll be time for the big tournament. 803-948-8327. That's our friends at Integrated Media. And, man, soon enough, speaking of them, the new Pro Swing is going to open. I was over there during the break. Oh, my gosh. I had so much fun. I didn't play great golf, but I had a lot of fun.
That's all that matters.
Integrated Media and Pro Swing. All right, we'll come back on the other side. Get you ready for Carolina's conference basketball slate. It starts tomorrow in Starkville. The EBPI is in full effect, and we'll explain more when the Postgame Show returns. Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union ready to help you out. If you have resolved here in the new year to get the finances a little tighter, save a little money when you're spending money, if you will, then now's a great time to see the folks at Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union. First, the comfort of knowing they've been in business since the 1930s really ought to tell you they know exactly what's up. And the fact that they do everything right here in the Midlands, all right? All their branches are in the Midlands. All the money they loan in the Midlands. Their customers, their members right here in the greater Columbia metro area. And whether it's a checking account, savings account, credit cards, car loans, student loans, anything else you need, home equity lines, mortgages, they can get it all done for you. And because they are not-for-profit, lower rates, fewer fees are returned to their members. My wife and I are members. We love what they've done for us. We think you will too. Check them out today and learn more at palmettocitizens.org. Welcome back into the Postgame Show on this Friday. Jay Phillips, Elijah Campbell with you. Tomorrow, Carolina men's basketball starts conference play. They'll be at Mississippi State, 1:30 airtime with Derek and Judge Casey Manning. And then Dawn's team will be in Starkville as well. So 2 games for the Gamecocks and Bulldogs at the Hump. And they also will play at 2 o'clock on Sunday, 1:30 airtime with Brad Muller on the call. Both those games on WNKT 107.5, the game in Columbia. And for the men, across the Gamecock Radio Network. Before we get into the EBPI, which for those of you who weren't familiar with it last basketball season, that's the Elijah Basketball Percentage Index. We've just stolen the BPI term from the 4-letter, and we've made it our own 4-letter. That's right. So, but the EBPI has been in full effect, getting you ready, not just for tomorrow's game, but a look ahead to the conference slate. So we'll be doing that for you before we get out of here. But Justin is going to talk on the phone first with us here this afternoon. Hey, Justin, how are you?
How you doing, guys?
Good, buddy.
Hey, guys, I'm part of the team, and they did a good job this season, but at the end, players cannot quit after a ball game. If you're going to quit, just do it before you do a ball game. And another thing, Gary no credit, too, because that defense, they're not going to let South Carolina football. And they made us uncomfortable. Gary no credit for that. And for Georgia, too, give those that credit. They were all wanting to play against every SEC play, and they got to do better. Take care, guys. Go get guys. Stay strong.
All right, Justin. Happy New Year,
Thanks,
buddy.
Justin.
Yeah, we spoke earlier about it, and I know Nick Emenwari has put out his statement now, and Langston last hour, if you missed it, I thought really did a nice job of saying, look, you got to blend these things. There's no doubt Nick made a mistake. All right, Nick screwed up. He didn't tell anybody. And I think he thought in his mind it would be okay and that people would understand. But, again, based on everything we've heard, he didn't tell anybody until halftime. He said in his statement last night that he put out, which was around 6:30 or so, that he knows he has to take accountability for what happened. But beyond that, yeah, again, it would have been fine if he had said, just like Rocket Sanders and Kyle Kennard, hey, I'm gonna opt out. It's commonplace these days. No one's gonna hold that against you.
Nope.
Even if you had done it a week prior, maybe even a couple of days. Again, night before, day of, no, and certainly in game. That's
the worst part.
Yeah, you did.
You're
it.
blindsiding people.
Yeah,
and that's the thing. Blindsiding somebody's not cool.
They're
in
prepping
any walk
for
of
you.
life.
Yeah, you just can't. You can't do that. And yes, Justin, last night, again, it was a heck of a defensive game. That was fun to watch. That was a good game. It might not have been fun in the sense that you might want to see, 45-42, but fun in terms of how those two defenses got after it all night. Just Georgia had nothing on offense. And I know, tough, man. Hey, Gunner, go win us a playoff game against a really good Notre Dame team in your first ever start, kid. Good luck. We're pulling for you.
Yeah, this is a top 5 defense in SP+. They have scored more points off turnovers, 42 more than the next team in the country.
That was what was crazy. 42 more than anybody else.
That's how they win games, man.
Yeah. Thank you, Justin. And again, next Thursday, Penn State, Notre Dame. Next Friday, Texas, Ohio State in Miami and Dallas, respectively. John is up next. Happy New Year, sir. Well, I guess we already told you that because you were on yesterday too. But how are you? Happy New Year anyway, man.
Yeah. Hey, Happy New Year again, fellas. Yeah, I'm doing well. It's good to be Friday, that's for sure.
Yes.
By the way, forgot to mention something yesterday. The dumbest thing ever happened at the Citrus Bowl the other day. That stupid fake wedding that they had.
Oh, that's a real wedding.
I think it was real.
No, it was real. No, I get confirmed. The person wearing the Cheez-It costume was an ordained minister. Yeah. That was a real wedding. Those people are legally married.
Not the place to do that.
Oh, come on, John. Come on. Don't rain on love.
This is the #1 love-loving show in America. No, we will not accept it. We will accept all weddings.
Come on, Jay. They had enough Cheez-It. They had enough Cheez-Its raining on them. They don't, either way, it just kept, well, anyway, like I said, not my thing. But anyway.
I get it.
Jay, you mentioned this, and we've talked about this before, privately on X, but, y'all were talking about Miami and Nebraska back in the day.
Yeah.
And, we've talked, y'all mentioned the Orange Bowl. The worst thing that ever happened to Miami was they tore the Orange Bowl down. effectively taking away one of the best home field environments of all time. But really, back before the playoff began, right after Carolina and Alabama, Ole Miss, and Miami got snubbed, it made me kind of laugh a little bit and joke what the old-timers have always said. And then I started thinking maybe they weren't wrong. The old-timers have always said the worst thing that ever happened to Carolina was Carolina got out of the ACC. And that made me start to think a little bit more, what are some of the dumbest things, or not the dumbest things, but just what are the worst things that ever happened to Carolina that, you know, have kind of hindered Carolina over the years? I've asked you, is it leaving the ACC like that in, 1972?
71.
Or was it James B. Holderman firing Jim Carlin in 1982
81,
or at the end of 81?
Right.
And by the way, don't forget, that was less than a calendar year after Holderman had fired Frank McGuire.
Yes.
So maybe the worst thing that ever happened to Carolina athletics was James B. Holderman, who, wound up being a crook himself. But I don't know. I mean, some of the worst decisions that have ever been made, you could do a top 10 list on that with Carolina. And Jay,
yeah, you could do it with a lot of folks. You could. All right, so of those two, leaving the Atlantic Coast Conference or Jim Holderman firing Jim Carlin, I will not hesitate, as someone who grew up around here, to tell you that Jim Carlin being fired was the worst decision you could have made for Carolina athletics. He was the athletics director as well. I understand those who would say leaving the Atlantic Coast Conference. And who knows? You know, we can only be revisionist historians to a certain point. Everything becomes conjecture after that. The fact of the matter is, 20 years later, South Carolina got a golden opportunity to join the premier conference in college athletics. And you've now been a member of the SEC longer than you were a member of the ACC, by now a pretty good margin, by about a decade. And it's, again, I was in college when that happened. And it was probably, other than like the day, the one semester I made the dean's list, it was like the best day in college. I was like, oh my God, because I had buddies that grew up in Knoxville, and I had a buddy who was an Auburn guy. But two of my best friends grew up in Knoxville, and they were always talking about Tennessee, Georgia, Tennessee, Bama, Tennessee, whatever, and Neyland Stadium and SEC football. And I remember a buddy of mine had a poster of a Tennessee football cover from the a Sports Illustrated cover from the 80s, some big game. And I was like, man, that'd be cool if I had that at Williams-Brice or something like that. So to join the mighty SEC.
Can I throw this in?
Yeah. Hang on, John. There was the mighty SEC was a big deal. Leaving the ACC 20 years earlier certainly hurt, but the ACC was screwing Carolina over. And may he rest in peace. My good friend Tommy Moody used to talk about those things. And you probably did need to get on out of there because it wasn't help. They weren't helping you at all. But Jim Carlin had it going. Now, not going to the point of like Clemson winning the title or Georgia winning the title, who you played every year. But he had a Heisman winner. He had put other NFL running backs into the NFL. He put Willie Scott into the NFL as a first-round pick. It was recruiting. His recruits were the ones that were the foundation of the 1984 team because they were the freshmen that were coming along. And it was a power struggle. And you're never going to win a power struggle as an AD or coach with your school's president. You're just not. He should have, but it's not Coach Carlin's fault. And I remember having Coach Carlin on the program many times, in his later years. And he was a wonderful man. To me, where Carolina football could have gone if Jim Carlin had stayed, I don't know. But I think it was headed in a fantastic direction, especially considering what Clemson and Georgia were doing at the time. So I'd say Carlin getting fired. Drive around the SEC coming up.
From the WIS Traffic Studios, I'm Elijah Campbell. A few accidents to get to. They're causing some issues on the roadways, starting with an accident reported on Bull Street near Elmwood Avenue, causing a decent delay right now. Got 2 accidents on Highway 1 at Augusta Road, one over at O'Neill Road, or O'Neill Court, rather, and the other at Brickyard Road. Got another one on Boney Road near Blythewood Road, I-20 eastbound at Bush River Road near exit 63, I-26 westbound near US 301 and exit 154. Got one on Killian Road at I-77, South Carolina 277 southbound at I-20, one over at US 176 Broad River Road, another one on US 378 near Highway 769 and Congaree Road.
It is Drive Around the SEC time on this Friday. Welcome back in. Jay and Elijah with you. Again, just one team left in the college football playoff, and that's Texas. Elijah Campbell, is Texas the best team in the Southeastern Conference? Does being alive still equate to being the best? Georgia beat them twice.
Yeah, Georgia beat them twice. They had Texas's number this year. But you look at a lot of the numbers throughout the season in terms of cumulative. If you're big into the efficiency numbers, Texas is as good as it gets. But, I think you still got to give Georgia that title. They won the conference. They beat them twice, fair and square.
Texas, again, a 6-point underdog in Dallas to Ohio State next week. I saw on Josh Pate's podcast that, I guess, for those who are degenerate gamblers and do the future betting on things that could happen, apparently some of the books last week before games were played on New Year's Eve or New Year's Day had a hypothetical matchup of Texas and Ohio State, and it was Texas like -1.5. Like you could have gotten those points.
Oh, man.
I don't know. Anyway, how things have shifted,
Because Ohio State has been
been dominant.
A buzzsaw that is causing death and destruction throughout college football right now, because that's what they're doing.
So, anyway, but Texas is the only SEC team that is left. Will Bama make it back next year? If they do, they'll do it without one of their defensive coach, co-defensive coordinator, and safeties coach Colin Hitchler has been fired by Kalen DeBoer. Here's what's interesting, Elijah Campbell. The Alabama defense finished 9th in the country in total defense, and they were 19th in passing defense. And the safeties that Hitchler coached have been very, very good this season and are likely headed on to the next level. There's something else, as like Sherlock Holmes might say, afoot here. I'm not trying to be Mr. Conspiracy, but if you're just trying to, maybe that's the weakest link on the Alabama defensive staff. I don't know, but I mean, by all accounts, the job is being done.
I got a theory.
Okay.
And I think you answered your question within saying the title of this man. He said co-defensive coordinator.
Correct.
There might be too many cooks in the kitchen.
Yeah.
And I think they're kind of just streamlining a play calling process. And who knows, maybe it was kind of an inefficient process to call plays and do the game planning. And not everybody has 2 coordinators for one job, right? Not everybody's got a co-offensive coordinator, a co-defensive coordinator. Kane Walmack is probably the more experienced coach, play caller for defenses. I think that's probably your best option.
And you know what's interesting,
though? Streamline it.
You know who brought Hitchler with him to Tuscaloosa? Kane Walmack.
I think they decided between the two, and they're like, all right, this is the guy we're sticking with.
Yeah.
We wish you the best, sir, in your endeavors.
So there you go. We'll see. But there's one big move at Alabama. But you're right, might just be streamlined. Nothing happening here yet, so this becomes a speculation question more than anything else. Will Mike Bobo be the offensive coordinator at Georgia like next week, because I got to tell you, man, I heard from some Georgia friends today, and all you had to do for a while, Fire Bobo was trending on Twitter.
It was.
Is it Bobo's fault? Or do they need to go get some players? Is it both? I mean, is it just maybe time? I don't.
I think you start with the wide receivers coach. I think you probably can the wide receivers coach, because those dudes were way too talented to drop the amount of passes that they did this season. Like, straight up, they didn't have a consistent downfield passing threat the entire year.
Right.
The entire year.
No.
And the offense was kind of handcuffed because Brock Bowers wasn't walking through that door.
Right. And
you didn't have
was
that
just
easy
not
10 yards. Each time.
I thought Delp was going to be, I think you and I have discussed this during the season, I thought Delp was going to be about 75 to 80% of what Brock Bowers was, because that's how he was recruited.
And
instead, he's more like 40%.
And then the offensive line didn't get much better throughout the year, too. Like, Monroe Freeling was a 5-star recruit, a kid here from the state of South Carolina, played at Oceanside Collegiate. And, buddy, he got eaten alive in the Superdome last night by those Notre Dame edge rushers. They would stunt, they did all types of stuff, and it tore them up. That offensive line was not to the level that the Georgia championship team offensive lines were. You were that good on the defensive line, you were that good on that side of the trenches, but you didn't have it on the offensive line this year. And I think that's why Ole Miss was able to keep you from scoring more than 10 points.
Yep.
That's why Notre Dame kept you from scoring more than 10 points.
Yep.
And that's why you didn't score any points hardly in the first half of that Alabama game. Now, you got your bleep together in the second half and almost pulled off a comeback.
Didn't do much against Texas in the championship game in the first half.
Yeah, exactly, at all, right? And I think maybe Gunnar Stockton coming in and giving a change of pace that Texas wasn't prepared for, I think made a big difference in that football game. But until then, you weren't moving the ball at all against Texas. So I think really, I don't know if you completely, pull the trigger on canning Bobo, because who's out there that is going to be a significant.
That's a great question. And I think this is one to borrow, believe it or not, from Will Muschamp. But I can remember Will in his early days here in Columbia saying, there are some things that we can do developmentally, but otherwise these are things that we need to, and I'll direct quote him here, fix through recruiting.
And they recruit just fine.
Yeah. And so, where is it for Georgia? And is it a matter simply of finding that elite receiver like a Ryan Williams and bringing him to Athens instead of getting him to Tuscaloosa or wherever? I don't know. That's just one example, right?
You got to bring a playmaker.
You've got to go
develop them.
Where's your next AJ Green, right? You need to go get that kid. Stockton's going to be fine. And again, if this, the rest of the Southeastern Conference should look at what happened last night and then look at this Georgia team overall and go, again, that you can tell all season that's not a great Georgia team.
Mm-hmm. The warts were there all season long.
And they won the Southeastern Conference championship.
Yeah.
Like, that should scare you. Like, that was not a very good team relative to what you expect. And they won the Southeastern Conference championship. So we'll see if Mike Bobo is going to be there. Excluding the college football playoff teams, the Southeastern Conference 6-4 in its bowl games, and they're done. So Texas is left, obviously. So excluding the CFP teams, 6-4. I mean,
that's me. It's whatever.
So who? Carolina lost.
Missouri won.
Alabama lost.
Oklahoma lost.
And did Vandy?
Vandy won.
They beat Georgia Tech.
They beat Georgia Tech. Impressive win. It was a very impressive.
Somebody scream at me so
Arkansas beat Texas Tech.
Yeah.
No, Arkansas beat Texas Tech.
Won.
Arkansas won.
All right,
you don't have it in front of you. It's
I don't have it in front of me.
Ole Miss won. Who are we forgetting?
Auburn didn't play
at their radio right now.
Mississippi won.
Tennessee got beat.
LSU won. Well, Tennessee was in the playoffs, so they don't count.
Yeah, so it wasn't a bowl game.
Who are we forgetting? I don't have it in front of me. I just wrote it down that they were 6-4. I went and looked
doing
earlier.
This on memory, which is a dangerous.
Texas A&M. A&M.
And we came up with that at the exact same time.
A&M lost.
How about that?
Yeah, so there you go.
Our brains are synchronized.
That's right. Basketball this weekend, real quick. Do I have time? Yeah, I got time here. Basketball. And we'll have the EBPI projections for Carolina coming up in just a second. Tomorrow at 11 o'clock, by the way. Ugh. Yeah. Florida at Kentucky.
That's going to be such a good
Top 10 matchup. Yeah, if they're not sleepy. Georgia at Ole Miss. Arkansas at Tennessee. Missouri at Auburn. Vandy at LSU. Oklahoma, number 12 in the country, at number 5 Alabama. And Texas and Texas A&M tomorrow night from College Station. That is your opening day
I like
of
that.
men's college basketball. Florida, Kentucky should be a lot of fun. Oklahoma, Alabama could be a lot of fun as well. All right, that's our drive around the SEC, brought to you by Herndon Chevy. When we come back, again, the EBPI has been in full effect. We'll get you ready for tomorrow's game in Starkville and begin to gently look ahead to what Carolina has in store, because the 2 home games next week are going to be fun and really hard. You're listening to the Postgame Show. 12 minutes in front of 6 o'clock on this Friday night. Welcome back in. Final few minutes of the postgame show. Jay and Elijah with you. Again, reminders that Carolina basketball on our airwaves all weekend long. Tomorrow, 1:30, the men at Mississippi State. Derek and Judge Manning on the call. It's a 2 o'clock tip from the hump. And same venue, same time, same bat channel. Thank you. I could do that as a little kid. Dawn Staley's team will be over there. Brad Muller on the call Sunday at 1:30, 2 o'clock tip. Again, those games on 107.5 in Columbia and across the Gamecock radio network or on the app, wherever you listen to them. Just find it. We'll be here for you. The EBPI is here for you as well. Now,
Always.
Again, the EBPI did a great job last season in its first full year on our radio station. The EBPI is the Elijah Basketball Percentage Index, which is it's a variation of just the regular Basketball Percentage Index, which the four-letter network employs, and I guess other people use something similar.
This one's just more accurate.
Yes, exactly. Well, hey, it's been proven. It's it's right there for you. Currently, the BPI gives South Carolina a 19.4% chance to win tomorrow's basketball game. And for what it's worth, Ken Pomeroy, their formula projects South Carolina to go just 5-13 in conference play. South Carolina was 13-5 in conference play last year. So what's the early look at the EBPI telling fans?
I'm afraid that 5-13 projection can be pretty accurate. I've got a couple red flags with the South Carolina team right now, and it's nothing that can't be rectified. But as we talked with David Cloninger in the first hour of the show, I don't like the amount of offense that can be created with your guards. You got to have a guard that can take somebody one-on-one when you need a shot and be a supplementary playmaker next to Colin Murray-Boyles.
Right. Michi had that role last year.
He did. Michi had it. Talon was able to facilitate a lot of your offense. He was able to knock down catch and shoot three-pointers as well. I mean, somebody's going to have to step up and take over that role, whether it's Jamari Thomas, whether it's Jacoby Wright. Jacoby, during non-con at the beginning of the season, showed some flashes to be able to do that, but they need to do it consistently. You got to have really good guard play, especially off the bounce. This is a team that, in terms of catch and shoot threes, is really solid. They're really good at when they catch a pass off of like a hammer baseline pass and hitting a corner three, pretty solid. Or when the ball touches the paint and it's kicked out, they catch in rhythm. They're really good. Morris Ugasuk this year is one of the best, catch and shoot players that I've seen in college basketball in terms of reliability of if that ball gets in the paint and it's kicked out and it's in Morris's hands, I like his chances of hitting that three. And he can be a real weapon, and you want to be able to generate
I like
more of
his
those
progression
things.
a lot, man. I really do.
He is helping them right now.
Yeah.
And you'd hate to have to ask more of him because of the leap he's already made and he's already improved.
Fair.
But if no one else does it, he might have to be the one to get a bigger role in that. That's one thing I don't love about this team right now is they don't have that, right? When games get tight and your offense gets in a funk, can you have somebody as a guard? Because Colin's going to get a lot of attention, and Colin's going to do a lot. He's already top 10 in the conference in terms of usage percentage. You already use him a lot. If no one else steps up, you got to have to use him more, and you have to put more on his plate than is already there. And I think that's just such a tall ask because you're going to get in games. Most games that you play in, you're not going to be the better team. Straight up, you're not going to be the better team.
And at least based on where things are now,
I would say in maybe like 13 or 14 of the games you play, you will not be the better team. But in maybe half of those, you'll have the best player on the floor.
Yeah.
And you're going to have to utilize that because Colin is legitimately a lottery pick type talent in terms of what he can do with facilitating your offense, scoring around the basket, being an efficient scorer. But as we've seen in the non-conference play, the Indiana game being a perfect example, Clemson as well, Colin can take himself out of the game with foul trouble. You got to be able to be able to supplement it if he gets in those situations, which will happen. It
will happen at times, and if it doesn't happen to where he does it to himself, which I think can be contained to some degree, it isn't going to be lost on any opponent. Hey, who's the best guy we should really look at? And then the question becomes, who, as you said, who will be there to pick that slack up? And ultimately, someone's going to have the opportunity presented to them. I would think starting tomorrow, we're going to see Mississippi State guard the hell out of Colin Murray-Boyles.
And they're going to have throw two bodies at him. Cameron Matthews, who's 6'7", but freakishly athletic, freakishly strong. Keyshawn Murphy, the 6'9", 6'10", player that they usually play to guard centers. He's guarded most team centers. Is more athletic than your 6'10" college basketball player, who some of them can be statues. This guy is not. This guy is as fast as Cameron Matthews is, jumps incredibly high, can switch and even guard smaller players. There's a lot of defensive versatility with this Mississippi State team. Maybe not as much as they had last year. This is not a defensive unit that's as good as they were last year, but they're better on offense because they don't turn the ball over a lot. They're a whole lot better at taking care of the ball, and they have a go-to scorer. But defensively, they're going to have a plan for Colin, and other guys are going to have to hit shots because I think Colin's going to see a lot of double teams against really good players, especially if that ball gets into the short corner. They love to trap the short corner.
Right. Yeah, I mean, listen, last year, Carolina surprised a lot of people because, quite honestly, I think the projections were about the same.
Very similar.
So I'm like you said, you get why the 5-13 projection is there. And Ken Palm is one of the 2 or 3 most respected in terms of how they do their job. So it's going to be up to these guys to find a way to step up and take those chances. It starts tomorrow. Carolina swept State last year. So
I still give them a 36% chance of winning it.
All right. Well, that's much better than the BPI. So
South Carolina, top 10 in the country in free throw rate. Mississippi State fouls a lot. That's your key.
2 o'clock tomorrow. We'll have it on these airwaves. Y'all have a great weekend. Enjoy the final weekend of pro football. We'll see you Monday. Oh, holiday travel, holiday stresses got you a little wound up and tight. Time to go to the Joint Chiropractic Centers and get to feeling better. They have one very simple goal: to improve the overall health of their patients with affordable, convenient chiropractic care and to help you maintain and prevent reoccurring issues. Listen, you bothered by back pain, neck pain, shoulder pain, you wake up in the morning just a little too stiff, go see them. You don't have to worry about appointments. You don't have to worry about insurance. They're FSA and HSA approved. You can be in and out quickly. They're open Monday through Friday, 10 to 7, Saturday, 10 until 4. If you've never been to a chiropractic center and you're curious about what's going on, for just $29, you can get a consultation, exam, and a chiropractic adjustment. Learn if it's right for you. And once again, no appointment ever necessary. Harbison Boulevard, Forest Drive, Roberts Branch off Killian, Sunset Boulevard in Lexington. Remember, at the Joint, you don't have to feel bad to feel better.